across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Just approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. And you are listening on DAB Plus Radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or you connect to us, whatever you're doing, to listen to us, to watch us. It is a pleasure to have your company. So much to talk about on the show today. Plenty going on. The Prime Minister's touchdown in China. We've not found out yet what he's given away, but who knows? As JK says, could have been the Isle of Wight, could have been all of our firstborns. But my God, he is desperate to get some sort of Chinese trade deal. He's already given away our safety in this country. We're approving the Chinese embassy to even get agreement for the go-ahead of that trip. So, goodness me, what is he going to do? Well, my first guest on the show perhaps may have some insights, having dealt with China herself. We'll come to that in a moment. Also coming up in this hour, we are going to be talking about more migrants coming to Britain than are being kicked out under, what a surprise, the one-in, one-out little exchange scheme that Keir Starmer signed. Labour's business rates U-turn for pubs being branded too little, too late. We'll talk to the top pub owner, restaurateur Tom Carriage a little bit later in the show, and a Talk exclusive with Isabel Oakeshott revealing that a group of anti-patriotic Brits have launched a coordinated campaign to tear down those Union Jacks that have been put up over the summer. I love seeing our flag. Anyone who's bothered about seeing our flag, probably living in the wrong country, I would suggest. So much more to come, including, this is going to be fun, midday, because the PM's overseas. We're going to have Deputy Prime Minister's questions, and it went so well for David Lammy last time. We'll keep a close brief on that, and let's get straight into the show right now. As I said, my first guest this morning is someone who knows all too well how to deal with China. She is, of course, the former Prime Minister, Liz Truss. Welcome her to the studio. Good morning to you.
Hi, Julia.
What a great day to have you in the studio. Great to have you join us. First of all, should Keir Starmer be going to China at all? You visited China as International Trade Secretary, you know, and other times. Should he be there?
I don't think he should be going to China. And I visited China when I was an education minister, when I was agriculture secretary. And at that time, I had drunk the Kool-Aid. I believed that doing more business with China was going to be good for both of our countries, that if China became richer, that they would become freer. But the scales fell from my eyes in 2018 when President Xi declared himself life president. And as I got more senior in the government, I saw what a massive security threat China was. And I was against the Huawei components being put into our telecoms network.
David Cameron and George Osborne pushing hard for that.
Well, and it was particularly under the Boris government. We were forced by the Americans, by the then first Trump administration, to rip out the Huawei components. And it's clear that China is trying to infiltrate our system. You know, we've had spies in Parliament. We've now had this spying scandal in Number 10, which I still haven't been given the full details of what happened there. And we've got far too many officials in our government who are beholden to China and who.
When you say beholden, they've still drunk the Kool-Aid. They haven't seen the light yet, or are they being paid? Are they secretly allied to? Are they spies for?
I do not know, but what I know is that when I was in government, the Treasury were constantly pushing a pro-China agenda. You know, they wanted us to have JETCOs with China, trade agreements with China. It was constantly being pushed. I know that senior Treasury officials went on to advise China to be involved in things like Asian development banks. So what you have
presumably
is a
very serious money at that point.
And you have a very cosy relationship also between elements of the City of London and China. And I think that is very concerning.
Are you saying
these are our enemies?
Are you saying you can't rule out that there are people working in the government right now, in the civil service, in the diplomatic corps, who are bought and paid for by the Chinese, or on a promise of being bought and paid for after they leave office?
I don't think you can rule it out. And look at the international bodies like the United Nations, like the World Trade Organization. These bodies have been infiltrated by the Chinese. You know, if we go to the Chagos court case that's been taking place at the International Court of Justice, a lot of that is being influenced by China and paid for by China. And we know Mauritius is heavily under the influence of China. And we know that government officials in Britain often look to international organisations to get jobs in the future. And where are they going to get the jobs from? Who do they need to impress? And we've seen Canada as well with Mark Carney kowtowing to China, former governor of the Bank of England, very pro-China when he was in that position.
Are people pro-China, though, because they're a little bit naive, or because, it's a powerhouse economy? It's the second biggest economy in the world. As the Prime Minister has said, he hasn't got rose-tinted glasses, and I'm paraphrasing, over China, but, you can't ignore China. The amount of times you order something online, you buy it at a shop. Odds are it's made in China. We have to face up to that reality, unless we're all going to say we're not going to buy stuff from China, we're not going to be trading them en masse, we're going to buy goods from elsewhere and we pay more.
I mean, I'm not against trading with China per se, but what I think we've got to be very careful about are things like critical minerals, high-tech equipment, armaments or goods that can be used as armaments. And of course it's America that is the country that has the wherewithal to take on China and challenge China. But I think we need to be clear which side we're on. And this approval of the mega embassy in Britain, which allows the Chinese to spy on us, after they've been caught spying in Parliament, after they've been caught spying in number 10 Downing Street, we're now saying it's open season on the city. You can spy on our internet connectivity. It is astonishing what is happening.
We understand that the Prime Minister and his team have all got burner phones, but
that's standard practice.
Yeah, that's standard practice.
Every time you go to China. In fact, every time you go to a number of other countries, including India, you would typically take a burner phone. That's standard practice.
The report yesterday was claiming that phones were bugged. Mobile phones belonging to the aides of Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak and you. Lots of question marks about whether actually your actual mobile phone yourself was bugged. I remember at some point you went very incommunicado, a lot of people wondering it, and Rishi Sunak as well. We understand that your phones were confiscated to all intents and purposes, put in a sealed case in a sealed room. Was your phone bugged, do you believe, by the Chinese?
Well, I have some evidence that my phone was interfered with, possibly not by the Chinese. When I was in the Foreign Office, I haven't heard anything apart from what I've read in the press about the Chinese specifically.
You haven't asked the security services yourself?
I haven't, no.
You have a security detail. I mean, with the Met, surely someone could ask.
I will ask once I've finished doing this media discussion.
Get back to us. Get back to us. Okay, but you're very, very wary. Is there anything?
You just have to be. I mean, I think in government there is now a culture where you've got to be wary of anything you say on a phone, anything you write in an email. Yeah. If you're going to have a seriously secure discussion, you go to a secure room. Yeah. You have no phones in it, so you just wouldn't have those types of conversation on a regular phone.
I mean, you've said that the UK is too soft on China. As you said, you had drunk the Kool-Aid. You then became very hawkish, certainly by the time you were Prime Minister, but also I think as international trade as well. You visited Taiwan. The Prime Minister, I mean, he'll have to raise these issues because he's going to be asked, have you raised these issues? And he has to say yes, whether it's about Taiwan, whether it's about the Uyghurs and basically slave factories, whether it's about the British prisoner from Hong Kong, Jimmy Lai, who's still behind bars and in solitary confinement for the last 5 years, simply for, trying to keep freedom in Hong Kong. When he raises those issues, does that scupper the chances of a trade deal, or can they be raised in a sort of, I've said it, I've ticked the box, let's move on, because what I want is a trade deal to improve the British economy? And is that trade deal, if we get it, is it worth it for that?
Well, no, it's not. And the Chinese often don't follow the letter of the law on trade deals anyway. Yeah. And I've had lots of incidents of shipments when I was DEFRA secretary being held outside Beijing on spurious grounds. The Chinese cannot be trusted. They signed up to the COP climate change deal, but they're busy building coal-fired power stations.
Well, they're sensible, aren't they, on that front?
And anybody who has had dealings with China understands that the promised investment often doesn't come, or if it comes with strings attached. I think the situation is, Keir Starmer is desperate. The British economy is in a dire state. It's been stagnant, not just for the last 2 years, but pretty much the last 25 years. People's living standards are not increasing. His whole philosophy of the economy is wrong. He's a Keynesian. He believes in tax and spend. He believes in big government. We're at the end of that experiment and it's been an utter disaster, and he can't cope, which is why he's just clutching at any straw he can, and this straw is China.
He would say, worry not too for it to come here, he would say that, it's all down to you. You're the one who broke the economy when you were Prime Minister briefly. That's what he'd say.
It's rubbish. I mean, every single economic indicator is worse than it was when I was in office. And the Bank of England had admitted that the crisis in 2022 was caused by them. They admitted that in a report they sneaked out in 2024. But the problem is Keir Starmer, the Bank of England, the Treasury, they're all part of the same economic groupthink. They all believe in net zero. They all believe in DEI. They all believe in mass migration. They all believe in big government. It doesn't work. I'm the Prime Minister who tried to change it. I got sabotaged by these people. And now, they're trying to blame me. What a joke. They're trying to blame me for 30 years of stagnation. I don't think so. I think, look at Britain's energy prices.
Yeah.
The highest in the world. I tried to get fracking going because I wanted to reduce the energy prices. The minute I was out of office, fracking was banned again. How is that working out for people in Britain?
Look, we
still have
the joyful possibility of an Ed Miliband chancellorship in the Treasury. Looking forward to that if Andy Burnham did make his way back into government and he appointed him as Chancellor?
Well, I don't think Andy Burnham is going anywhere near the House of Commons anytime soon, because whatever you say about Keir Starmer, he has got a pretty firm grip on the Labour Party and he's managed to keep Burnham out. And I can't see that many more by-elections coming up. So I think we'll be let off the possibility of Ed Miliband as Chancellor. But the point I would make is that the Chancellor makes very few decisions these days. All of the monetary policy is down to the Bank of England, which they've utterly failed on. We've got a terrible inflation rate. No one's holding Andrew Bailey to account, by the way. No one cares about him. And you've got the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, are in charge of tax and spend policy. And their forecasts are always wrong. So
yeah,
Rachel Reeves is simply just a spokesman for these people. I mean, she's not a very good spokesman, but that's what is going on.
OK, let me talk to you. You're talking about people trying to sabotage you. We've had a lot of psychodrama, have we not, between Tories
Thank God
and Reform.
I have to say, it's such a relief not to be directly involved in these. Even though people keep talking about me, at least I'm not involved in today's psychodrama.
Well, right now at this moment, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch is giving a speech in central London. She's used Labour and Reform of psychodrama, but she just said, I was elected by Conservative Party members to renew and rebuild. That's exactly what I'm doing. People who don't agree with this direction need to get out of the way. Do you agree with Kemi Badenoch's direction of travel as leader, or do you need to get out of the way, and have you been approached by Reform?
Well, I'm not currently involved in myself in party politics. I've set up a new show, the Liz Truss Show.
The Liz Truss Show. How did you come up with that name?
It's available. It's available on YouTube. It's available on Rumble. I talk about the issues because
she's got the plug-in.
I did. Are
you still a member of? I would have got to it. Are you still a member of the Conservative Party?
I am. But the show is non-party political. It's all about how Britain and its decline isn't just a problem of party politics. It's a problem of our system. It's a problem of the civil service. It's a problem of the bureaucracy. It's a problem also of the mainstream media and the BBC, who have peddled a false narrative for a very long time, and now the country's in serious trouble. So I'm talking about things like the net zero agenda. I'm talking about the grooming gangs. I'm talking about the free speech crisis in Britain, the fact that people are being jailed in our country. These are things that emerged before Labour got into power. This is a result.
Under the Tories.
Most
of this happened under the Tories.
Well, I've got a show called The House of Blair, which talks about how it all started, or most of it started under Blair. With a human rights
but you lot were in power for 14 years. You were in a lot of those governments. You could have stopped a lot of it.
Absolutely right. I completely agree with that, Julia. We should have reversed the Human Rights Act, the Climate Change Act. We should have reversed the Bank of England Act. We should have done all of that. There was not agreement in the Conservative Party because there were too many Conservatives in name only.
And are there still?
I'm afraid.
We've got Andy Street, Ruth Davidson,
some of them are still hanging around.
They're desperate. They're desperate. So there are 7 million voters who are centre or centre-right, and they're looking for a party of centrists like that.
The trouble is, those people are going to vote for Ed Davey. I don't see the gap in the market for more centrism. Okay. The gap in the market is for a party who says the whole Blair experiment was a disaster. we can't stop illegal immigration. We can't have cheap energy. Our economy's in a mess thanks to all these Blairite policies that tied up the state. I mean, it's so difficult being a minister now because all of the decisions have been taken away from you. They've been given to these so-called independent bodies that have essentially been taken over by left-wing human rights obsessives. And until we change that system, nobody is going to succeed. So what I want to see from the Conservatives, but also from Reform, is a commitment to repeal all of that legislation and actually change the senior officials in our government. Because unless we change them,
and they need to be accountable to ministers and therefore voters, not to each other. But which is the party best placed right now? Under Kemi Badenoch's leadership of the Tories, Nigel Farage's leadership of Reform, which is the party best placed to do that? Who would make the better Prime Minister?
What I'm saying is that...
Answer the question.
I'm not going to answer the question because
Why not?
I am...
You're a Conservative Party member. Surely the answer to you must be Kemi Badenoch. If it's not Kemi Badenoch, obviously, does that tell us you may be considering defecting?
My answer is I'm not getting involved in party politics at the moment. I had 14 years as a Conservative MP. I had a very brutal time as Prime Minister being sabotaged, not just by the Bank of England, but also by a lot of so-called Conservatives. I want to spend my time talking about what needs to change in Britain. I don't want to jump back into that cesspit at the present.
At the present. So you're not ruling out jumping back. I mean, at the end of the day, look, like me, I talk the talk. I'm sitting in my studio, but I can't change anything in my studio. You'd have the opportunity as a politician to change it.
But
have you been approached by Nigel Farage? Have you been approached by Nigel Farage?
I'm going to answer your last question first.
I'm going to ask it again.
What I know from being involved in politics is that it is downstream of the system and the media. And this is why I have set up my own show, The Liz Truss Show, and I want to develop independent...
Available on YouTube and Rumble.
Available on YouTube and Rumble. Because I want to see a real challenge to the way Britain is governed.
Okay.
I think the problem is much bigger than party politics. And what journalists like you, Julia, like to do is reduce things to a pantomime of do you like this person, do you like that person?
No,
what are you going to do?
With all due respect, Liz Truss, as somebody who was reported by my own government to American Home, Anti-Counter-Terrorism Unit for the stuff I was saying, calling out...
You'll probably get political asylum now in the United States,
When I was calling out lockdown policies, things like, with all due respect, and I was, you were very solid on the trans issue and things like that, but with all due respect, on lockdown, perhaps the biggest event of our lifetimes, you were very quiet. I wasn't. I could have lost my job. I could have lost my livelihood. We lost our YouTube page. I was being absolutely attacked non-stop. You staged them. I didn't. So don't blame all the media. Some of us were speaking out.
I respect you for that, Julia. At the time, I was Trade Secretary, and I had to get almost 100 trade deals done in a year. And I was pretty much the only person travelling during COVID on empty planes,
allowed to,
going around the world trying to sort out...
You should have spoken out. You did speak up in Cabinet.
I did speak up in Cabinet.
I'm told you did not speak up in Cabinet.
Well, that's bollocks. That is absolute bollocks. I did speak up in Cabinet.
Okay.
I did speak up in Cabinet.
I'm going to come back to
But I think this is an important thing for listeners to understand. When you're in politics, you operate under collective responsibility.
I get that.
So once you agree something in Cabinet, you have to go along with the line. Now, COVID, I didn't like the lockdowns. I probably supported the first one, but I certainly didn't support the subsequent ones. However, I had a lot of trade deals to do. It was a battle I felt I couldn't win, given the people pushing very hard for lockdowns, like Michael Gove and Dominic Cummings, who were on the inner committee, if you remember.
Yeah, I remember.
I was completely excluded from any of the inner committees at the time. I raised my concerns in Cabinet.
Okay.
But yes, you were right, Julia. If that's what you want me to say.
No, I'm just saying. The media. Politics down through the media. Sometimes we can move the dial. Can I come back to that question? Have you been approached by Reform? Approached by Nigel Farage to join Reform?
No, I'm just focusing on my show.
So no, you haven't. No one in Reform has approached. I just want to clarify that. Can we also just talk about Keir Starmer not in China, but what he was doing before he became Prime Minister, when he was a human rights lawyer? Front page of the Telegraph today, saying that Sir Keir Starmer led a legal case that opened the door to hundreds of British soldiers being pursued for alleged war crimes. He worked free of charge, so pro bono, so he didn't have to do this. This was his choice to work free of charge alongside his close ally, Lord Hermer. His name just keeps on coming up, doesn't it? He's now the Attorney General, of course, and along with another solicitor, Phil Shiner, on the human rights claim in 2007 that basically changed the law governing troops in war zones. And basically, he was lead barrister on the case, Keir Starmer, which ultimately led the Ministry of Defence to order fresh inquiries into deaths in Iraq, triggering years of criminal investigations, including into people who had previously been investigated 2 or 3 times over their actions as veterans. We've now got the issue with the veterans who've been in the Troubles in Northern Ireland, where basically it's a free-for-all for private prosecutions if the government gets its way, whereas those who were paramilitaries in the IRA and others, absolute free pass, they're free to go. What do you make of that? What does that tell us about the man?
It's abhorrent that he did this, but we knew this already. You know, we knew he's a human rights lawyer who hates Britain, who prioritises the human rights of illegal immigrants over the human rights of British citizens. We know he was an architect of the Human Rights Act long before he was in Parliament. He's part of the cabal of lefty human rights lawyers who have essentially taken over the British government. I mean, the bit that isn't being directed by the economic establishment is being directed by the lawyers. You know, why have we seen the giveaway of the Chagos, or rather the payaway of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius? The answer is because international law is embedded within the ministerial code. It's following the law is embedded within the Civil Service Code, and that means following the ICJ, which is a court, as we've discussed earlier, which is being influenced by the Chinese. But Keir Starmer would rather kowtow to that than represent British patriotic soldiers. But like, I've always known which side he's on. It seems to me pretty obvious when you look at his past statements, his university history, the fact he's a lefty lawyer. This is what these people believe. You know, they don't believe in Britain. They don't believe in Britain.
OK. Liz Truss, she's got a new show. It's available on YouTube and Rumble if you haven't gathered that yet, called The Liz Truss Show. It's almost as clever as me calling my show The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. How do we come up with these imaginative titles? Liz Truss, former Prime Minister, of course, really great to get you in and covered a lot of ground. So much more to talk about, but we've got to take a break. 10:25 is the time. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you had to say. Lots of other things we want to hear from you about as well. But give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
A lot of them are very disappointing. And they're just sort of quite robotic and boring people. And they're not like real people. And I know people say that, and I don't want to just say the thing that everyone says, which is they're not like real people, they're like robots. But I promise you, they really, really are. But Suella is one of the few who, I've said this before, she might be insulted by this because we're probably closer in age, so it's not possible, but she could be my auntie. That's how I feel about Suella. She's a proper person. She's fun and interesting. She's a real human being. So I'm happy for her and I'm happy for Reform.
Across the UK, on DAB+. On YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:27 is the time. Well, goodness me, that was quite punchy from Liz Truss, wasn't it? In terms of her views on where we are in China and indeed on Keir Starmer. And well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on lots of the other big stories we're talking about today, which we're about to get to. One of the key stories, I think, that announcement yesterday. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, apparently too fit, or I don't know, maybe busy playing chess. I don't know what else she was doing, rewriting her CV probably, I don't know. But she was too busy. She sent an underling to the House of Commons to announce apparently a £300 million bailout for pubs. Not for restaurants and cafes, just for pubs, because they all, you know, working class people go to pubs, so we like pubs, don't we? Well, they don't like pubs that much, because that bailout, which is a U-turn on business rates to help struggling pubs, has been branded too little too late by, well, pretty much everybody involved in this. Certainly the pub landlord who we spoke to, Andy Lennox, a couple of weeks ago, who set up that whole basically ban your Labour MP from the pub campaign. He's certainly not changing his views. We're going to be talking to a leading publican and indeed restaurateur, Tom Kerridge, a little bit later in the show about what he makes of it. But too little too late to save the pub. I'm asking you this morning, how do we save the Great British Pub? I mean, for a start, you need to go out to the pub, guys. You need to actually be there spending your money, because that's kind of a bit crucial. But of course, people haven't got any money. Then it's difficult for them to spend that money, isn't it? But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message, as you know. So I like to say, joining me for the show, not the whole show, we only just let her in the studio, is Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisor. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Welcome back. You've been on your travels. You've been to Iceland.
I have, yeah. Birthday trip, absolutely amazing.
21st birthday trip. She had a wonderful time, but you've come back to, I mean, you think pub prices are expensive here. So tell me what you told me earlier about one round you bought.
Oh, one round of a gin and tonic, no alcohol beer, and a soft drink, cola drink, which came to £55.
You think we've got it bad here, guys? Seriously, Iceland's even worse. But we're heading that way. I think we're heading that way. I really do. We'll talk about the pubs in a moment. What did you make of Liz Truss? I mean, absolutely very clear on China, hostile state, you know, the hacking, very, very clear on her views on Keir Starmer as well. What did you make of all that?
Yeah, I think she's always been very, very sound when it comes to China and the hostile threat that they pose, and she's always been very outspoken about it. I thought it was quite interesting, your pressing of what happened during the COVID era.
We've done this a number of times, I have to say, but I never let her go away with that one. And same with Kemi Badenoch. Yeah, they're all quiet.
Absolutely, and they need to be held to account for that, and they need to be able to explain why.
As do all Westminster journalists who, when the biggest story of their lifetime happened, didn't see it.
Yeah,
they were too busy in their gardens enjoying spending time at home.
That's right.
They were. So that's what happened.
But I enjoyed your pressing on whether she would join Reform, whether she'd been approached. That was interesting. The answers, I thought, were very caged.
I thought things were left quite open. Yes. I did think. Well, now would she be a bonus for Farage? And there'll be a lot of people, you know, who might think. But anyway, let's go back to the trip to China. Keir Starmer's arrived in China. He hasn't given away, you know, our firstborns yet. Matter of time. He is desperate for some sort of trade deal with China. There is no trade deal that we can get with China. We are a minnow compared to China. They care not a jot about trade with us, other than the fact they can sell us cheap tat and solar panels and wind turbines and electric vehicles, all made in coal-produced factory, producing coal-fired factories. I mean, they're having a laugh at us. They're making money out of us.
Of course
even when they buy our fancy luxury goods, they're made in China in the first place. Yeah. What deal could he possibly get out of China?
Well, I don't think he can. I think what he's going over there for is to ask them to be nice to us and be our friend on the world stage, because we seemingly don't have many. What he really needs to do is you've brought up the solar panels. This is an issue close to my heart at the moment, a solar farm proposal down the road where I live. Horrendous.
So ugly.
On the green belt. And of course these solar panels are made, as you say, coal-powered industries, shipped over and made by Uyghur slave trade.
Yeah, I mean,
so they're bad always round. And of course, solar energy isn't going to cope with the UK.
Oh, you know, I mean, you and your facts. You've got to stop bringing facts up. Ed Miliband might hear them and he'll be all upset. But this is the thing. I mean, it was so clear. The announcement of this trip, which has been long on the cards, was announced within 24 hours of the final approval being given for that Chinese embassy. Yes. Just across the river from here. I'm still convinced that they can keep that legal issues overall going on that for the next few years. I don't think that's ever going to go ahead. I'm pretty sure the next government, whoever it is going to say, not happening. I hope so.
So do I, because I think the security implications are absolutely massive by having it there. And it's always a sign of a prime minister in trouble when they leave the country so frequently. And now he's gone about as far as he can go to avoid PMQs.
Feel free to stay there. I mean, he's only there for, was it 3 days, then he's going to Japan. Yeah. Look, I understand you. The Great Wall of China's lovely. Go there, you know, just go and do a nice little tour.
Well, he could, couldn't he? He could go down, he could go to Thailand, perhaps, and then he can go on to Australia.
I can recommend
New
some
Zealand.
lovely rooftop bars in Bangkok. I want to see Prime Minister. Stay out, stay away as long as you want. I mean, and also, we still have the pleasure of his deputy, David Lammy, stepping in to do Prime Minister's questions today. And it went so well for him last time.
I mean, we're all sort of waiting, aren't we, for what's going to be the next thing. He didn't wear a poppy at Remembrance Time. He made such an error at the last
There was some announcement, some live news on air while he was standing up as well.
No, he doesn't.
Had to respond to
prisoners that have been released and things like that.
The number of prisoners, and given that he was Justice Secretary, it's a small point worth making. I imagine that those sort of issues are going to come up as well. Where are you on these pubs? Because apparently a £300 million pubs business rate U-turn. A lot of reports saying it's the 12th U-turn. I'm pretty sure it's the 13th.
Oh, I think this is the 13th.
I'm pretty.
It's a number.
U-turns come along. You wait for a U-turn, and then 13 come along at the same time. It's been branded as too little, too late. It is very little. We are talking about some pubs seeing their business rates. I mean, all the help that was given during the COVID years basically taken away. It's okay. It's going to come. There's going to be some help back for the next 3 years, but not that much. They're looking at their business rates. They've been told in the budget they were going to be better off. Their business rates, some of them are going up, by tens of thousands of pounds a year. Yeah. At the same time that customers completely dropped off because no one's got any money and no one's out. I mean, particularly in January, you go to the pub and it's going to be half empty or empty entirely. And then they're talking about giving them help worth, for the average pub, £1,650. I mean, that doesn't even cover, I don't think that covers the increase in minimum wage or national insurance for your lowest paid employee.
No, it really doesn't. And when you look at the amount it costs to employ a 21-year-old, let's go for a young person, in 2020, I think it was 2010, it cost £17,000 all in to take
minimum wage. What, 40 hours a week?
Yeah, 40 hours a week, and now today it would cost the same employer £29,000. That's one hell of a difference.
Because their pay would be 26.5, and then you've got the national insurance for the employer on top. But again, because no one in Labour apparently has ever run a private business, they don't understand that if you put up the costs of employing somebody, businesses will either A, employ fewer people, B, not give them wage rises, C, sack some of the people they already employ because they can't afford them. And this is exactly what businesses have been doing. And then the Chancellor and the Prime Minister going, oh, well, that's weird. Why would that happen? Well, that's what everyone told you would happen, and then you did what you did anyway.
And these pubs then just have to close down because they can't afford to keep running with the cost of fuel, electricity, gas, just to keep the lights on. And then you've got the extra rates, business rates going in, corporation taxes. I mean, they are on a hiding to nothing. And this announcement is too little, too late. Yeah. It doesn't include other parts of the sector which are badly
for some reason, cafes and restaurants not applying.
Not applying.
Do you think this is a classic Labour, or look, loads of us Labour MPs aren't being allowed in pubs? By the way, Mr Lennox is saying he's absolutely carrying on with that ban. It's not good enough, this help. But it's now a campaign. We're going to talk to Tom Kerridge, the restaurateur, later about extending this to other areas of hospitality. There's this patronising Labour idea. Yes. Ooh, this is the Islington Hampstead lot, right? The working classes, they go to pubs, don't they, on a Friday night? So we need to. It's that patronising. Yeah. No, you know what? Working class people go to restaurants as well. You patronising little snotty-nosed gits. I mean, it's so seriously. It's just.
It's embarrassing.
It's like the other. It is. It's just like, well, let's be nice. Let's be nice to those poor people over there. That's literally their attitude.
Yeah.
Because they're such little.
There are so many
just can't
things.
say any of the words I want to say on air.
So many things you can say
You don't
about
hate these
it.
people enough. You don't hate these people enough. I'm going to say that about the BBC in a moment as well. We're going to take a quick break first. Get to your calls as well. 0344 499 1000. And why the BBC yesterday managed to do news items all about, by the way, Holocaust Memorial Day without mentioning Jews. You couldn't make this stuff up, but that really happened. And we'll prove it to you in a few moments. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:39 is the time. Do give us a call, have your say on particular interview with the former Prime Minister Liz Truss, and anything else you want to talk about, especially also the pubs, and how do we save the Great British Pub, because clearly this government is not intent on doing that. 0344 499 1000. Claire Pearsall's still with me, former Conservative government advisor. Just want to raise this other story. It's not the biggest story of the day. I get that. A lot of people go, oh, I don't. This stuff does matter though, because this is about the BBC. And I want to play you a little clip of various BBC programmes and news presenters talking about Holocaust Memorial Day, which was, of course, yesterday. Have a little watch and a listen.
27th of January, Holocaust Memorial Day, a day for remembering the 6 million people who were murdered by the Nazi regime over 80 years ago.
Now, today marks Holocaust Memorial Day, a day for remembering the 6 million people who were murdered by the Nazi regime over 80 years ago.
Today marks Holocaust Memorial Day, a day for remembering the 6 million people who were murdered by the Nazi regime over 80 years ago.
So 3 different news programmes, major presenters, all saying the same thing. Clearly a script that, if it's the BBC, has gone through at least 20 very senior people in a committee. And did you hear what wasn't said? Because they were saying the Holocaust Memorial Day was about the 6 million people who were murdered. No, it's not. No, not more than 6 million people were murdered in the camps by the Nazis. The key figure that 6 million refers to is Jews. The BBC on Holocaust Memorial Day failing to mention that it was Jews who were targeted, particularly a concern when they talk about their Reithian, absolute key aim, which is not just to entertain but also to inform and educate our nation at a time when many, many children aren't taught about the Holocaust in schools, and many, many people, adults, don't know what actually happened in the Holocaust. Claire Pearsall, I mean, genuinely, you don't hate the BBC enough. I said to my husband last night, I don't even think I can justify morally paying the licence fee anymore. I have to obey the law. I think it's immoral for me to give these people money now.
It's just gobsmacking, appalling, awful in equal measures. I can't say the words I'd like to say about
They issued
BBC.
an apology. Oh, thanks,
But why get that far?
And how many people did that go through?
Exactly. And knowing the BBC, you're right, this is a committee of people, very senior, who have been in the business for a long time, and they know that you cannot ignore the fact Jewish people were murdered.
But also, it's factually incorrect. If you refer, the There are at least 1 million other people. There were gypsies, Roma gypsies, there were disabled. Many others died as a result of Nazis, prisoners of war and the like. I mean, millions. The figure that 6 million refers to is to Jewish people. Yes. It's specifically targeted Jewish people. That's the number. So when you say 6 million people, what are you talking about? Genuinely, this stuff doesn't happen by accident. It keeps happening. And also yesterday, for some reason, starting to have a debate on one of the TV shows with Dale Vince, who's eco warrior, but also, I mean, pro Gaza. Absolute, I mean, he was wearing a keffiyeh. Keffiyeh is the sign of Palestine, Palestinian resistance against the Jews. It's for the destruction of Israel and the Jews. I'm sorry, you have someone on Holocaust Memorial Day sitting there, and he was debating lots of other stories, talking about this issue, wearing a keffiyeh, which is a sign of basically Palestinians. It's not resistance. It's about from the river to the sea, basically the destruction of Israel, the homeland of Jews. I'm sorry, this is not accidental stuff. They're doing this deliberately.
And it's appalling that this ever got through. And I saw Dale Vince on that program. You look at something and you think, no, we're not going here today, are we? Oh yes, look, we are. Yeah. And that morning I had been round in Portcullis House. There is the most amazing display of small shoes. Somebody has taken it upon themselves to look back at the children who lost their lives.
Jewish were murdered. Children. Let's call it the word murdered.
In these industrial death camps, and it was so heartbreaking. And then to come back and see that, and then hear the words that the BBC are using, you just think, where am I and why am I here?
And we're paying their wages. That's the bit that I just find. I say you don't hate the BBC enough. I was not a defund the BBC person until a couple of years ago, and now I'm getting to the point where we have to rip it up and start again. This place is poisoned. It is poisoned and poisonous. It is a danger to the cohesion and the safety of our people in our country. It's as simple as that. I really think the BBC, as it exists right now, got to rip it up and start again at this point. Give us a call, let us know your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to a call. Laura Jane is in Hampshire. Laura Jane, you wanted to have your thoughts on what Liz Truss had to say in that interview. What did you make of her?
Well, I mean, I want to know why she didn't resign if she felt that she had to, her thoughts on lockdown. Why didn't she resign? I mean, if you think about it, if you look back in history, Churchill crossed the floor, resigned twice on principal matters. We did hear that Robert Jenrick resigned when he disagreed with something.
The Rwanda policy,
the Rwanda policy.
Lord Frost, David Frost resigned from the Cabinet Office as a minister. We've had him on the show only last week. He resigned over the vaccine passports. He said that I know at the time, because I was speaking to a lot of people behind the scenes, and I've just basically had a full-time job as a campaigner as well as going there, and that was certainly by the end of the first lockdown. Again, I was a supporter of the first lockdown because I didn't realise they were lying to us about everything in terms of just that things had changed. They hadn't. But I knew that we had about a third of the cabinet was opposed to the lockdowns and opposed to closing schools and things like that. They were opposed to it, but about 2/3 were in favour. I spoke to him like, who have we got? Who can I call? Who do I try next? I can tell you that no one ever suggested to me that Liz Truss was speaking out in cabinet.
No. Well, I was one of those elderly ladies who went marching on a Sunday way before you joined us.
Good for you.
And I was considered, well, actually, by you, rather a bit of a conspiracy theorist, because there were views that I had. And we went marching because we knew it was wrong.
Yeah. I take my hat off to you. Again, but I listened to the facts. And I assumed the Chief Medical Officer and the Chief Scientific Advisor were telling us they told us we didn't need to lock down. When they told us we did, I assumed that was because there was new information and we needed to. They lied, and I feel like a fool for having believed those lies. As simple as that, because we didn't need to lock down to save us from COVID. And I was fooled, and I hold my hands up to that. Laura Jane, thank you for that. It's interesting that that's what she took away from it. I think this is such an issue, especially for our audience. We gained so many audience members. I still have people come up to me in the street at least once a week saying, thank you for getting me through lockdown. We were the only broadcast at the time who were actually going, not not sure this is a good idea. But anyway, lots more to come. We're going to take a quick break. I'd love to hear your thoughts on not just what Liz Truss had to say, but also Labour's business rates U-turn to supposedly help struggling pubs. It's been branded as too little too late. It clearly is. How do we save the Great British Pub? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. We're going to be talking in the next hour more about, Andy Burnham and all the shenanigans with Labour, and also that complete lie put out by Labour about the new Reform candidate, Matthew Goodwin, for that Manchester by-election. And we're also going to be talking about that legal witch hunt against British veterans who fought in the Iraq War, being led by, guess what, a pro bono voluntary, doing it because he felt it really mattered, Keir Starmer, before he became PM. That's all coming up fast. Then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to be hearing from Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott, with a fantastic exclusive about Operation Lower the Colours. You don't want to miss that. This is Talk.
And a lot of them are very disappointing.
Yeah.
And they're just sort of quite robotic and boring people. And they're not like real people. And I know people say that, and I don't want to just say the thing that everyone says, which is they're not like real people, they're like robots. But I promise you, they really, really are. But Suella is one of the few who, I've said this before, she might be insulted by this because we're probably closer in age, so it's not possible, but she could be my auntie. That's how I feel about Suella. She's a proper person. She's fun and interesting. She's a real human being. So I'm happy for her, and I'm happy for reform.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:49 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. We are the home of common sense. That's why we've got Claire Pearsall here, former Conservative Government Advisor. And also why we've got the brilliant Talk international editor, Isabel Oakeshott, joining us down the line right now to talk about a brilliant exclusive she's got, which is, well, the opposite. It's the very opposite of the brilliant campaign of Operation Raise the Colours of, hey, let's actually see our national flag. Let's have not just the Union Jack, but also the St George's Cross flying proudly on our high streets, and around our towns and villages and cities. This is Operation Lower the Colours. Tell us about it, Isabel.
Well, I was a bit depressed when I found out about this counter campaign, Operation Lower the Colours, because I think that Operation Raise the Colours has been quite uplifting in many ways, quite literally. It's brought a lot of people together. It's cheered up some pretty dismal spaces, made a number of us feel a new sense of national pride. Flags, I think most of our listeners will agree, shouldn't be anything other than a source of that word, pride, and a feeling of this is who we are, and it is something that can actually bring people together. But in a sign of how bitterly divided our culture has become, it seems that there are certain people who are truly offended by the British flag and think that it's a terrible thing, believe that it has somehow become a kind of symbol of racism or anti-immigration. And they have now launched a covert operation, which is being done as usual through sort of deep sort of, I don't know whether they're using WhatsApp, but anyway.
Surely they're using Blue Sky Social, surely.
Who knows what they're doing? But what we do know, because we've got screenshots of it, is that they're exchanging messages. They are using a system called UMaps, which is an open interactive map system, to share information about where Union flags have been put up, and updating each other on the status of those flags. Are they partially removed, still in place, completely removed, or maybe to be left? I'm not sure how many of them they're going to agree to leave. And this is an organised campaign to tear them down. Now, at the moment, we're only aware of 2 hotspots for this. One is in Stockport, and the other in Oxford, where there's been a lot of controversy surrounding flags. Oxford, very near where I live, pretty much the wokest city in the UK.
I've driven to Oxford recently a couple of times, and there's a lot of Union flags and England flags along sort of the roundabouts approaching the city. I remember thinking, oh, that's a surprise. How wonderful.
No. Well, you know that we did a story last week about an Labour Oxford councillor who was caught on tape. She was recorded describing the people that put these flags up as bastards.
Lovely.
So Oxford, we actually went out onto the streets of Oxford last week and talked to some ordinary citizens, and we found very divided opinions. You know, didn't take us any time to find somebody who used the word despicable in relation to raising flags, and then a Chinese student who was bewildered and sort of said, I don't understand. Where I come from in our country, the flag is a great thing. It's a source of pride, and I'm not remotely bothered by it.
Well, that's pretty much every country in the world. I mean, I'd love to see these people going to take down flags in America. Good luck with that one. But it is extraordinary. We are the only country in the world where there is a whole swathe of people, largely our sort of, public sector classes and left-wingers, who seem to think that our flag is a source of national sort of, embarrassment and shame rather than of national pride. I mean, it's quite bizarre. And again, these people, they're opposed to flying flags, except when it's, the Palestinian flag, the EU flag, or they love an EU flag, or, the so-called progressive pride trans flag. They love those flags. They put them in their bios on their social media. They fly them out the windows. They wear them at marches. They just don't like the national flags.
It's very depressing, really, but we should not be depressed by it, because I think there's going to be a counter campaign. I think we may be hearing later on one of our shows from the 2 guys who are behind Raise the Colours as a campaign. They will tell us how they plan to respond to this. I'm sure they're a bit dejected. In fact, I know they were, because they were not actually aware of this Lower the Colours nasty little counter campaign until I told them about it yesterday. They got straight onto it. They've been looking into who and what is behind it, and I suspect their attitude will be, you take them down, we're going to pop them
absolutely. Right. You know the business to get into, I reckon? Selling ladders. This is the new growth industry.
That is a good point. That is a good point.
So it's Raise the Colours, Lower the Colours, Raise the Colours Again campaign. Absolutely, great to talk to you. Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. But Claire Bissell, it is utterly bizarre, isn't it, that people feel such animosity and anger about our national flag. And the only reason this came about was because local councils kept sort of saying not flying the Union flag, not flying the St George flag. Oh, but absolutely fine for anyone in Wales to have the Welsh flag. Absolutely fine for anyone in Scotland to have the St Andrews flag. But the English flag, oh no, that's just racist. It's like, no, you've allowed it to be taken by the racists because you're not flying it. But they're quite happy to have, Palestinian flags or any other celebration of any other country's flag, some cultural day, but never our own culture, never our own identity.
I loved it when I saw the flags popping up, especially around my village, which was the last place I expected that to happen. But they were brilliant. They look absolutely fantastic.
It's beautiful. Both flags are beautiful.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
They absolutely are.
I feel good when I see those flags.
And it is nice, and it makes me smile every time I drive in. The big roundabout on the entrance to my village, there is a huge cross of St George up on the flagpost. It looks great. They're starting to look a bit tatty at the moment. They've been through the winter, and there's a lot of chatter on the local Facebook pages of people who are saying, we're going to replace them. They're putting their name to it. They're not embarrassed. And the local councillors, Green Party, are really unhappy about it.
I can't.
But
don't know
that's
how
what
you
you
can.
guess,
I mean,
isn't it?
I've got the Labour councillor in my North London constituency, the Green councillor, even worse. Hey, though, let's talk very briefly about the by-election in Gorton.
Yes.
I could get Gorton Denton. Apparently, the Green Party keeps getting it wrong as well. But we've got the first candidate. We know it's not going to be Andy Burnham as the Labour candidate. Big battles over was he or was he not told whether he was blocked or not. I mean, who cares? I mean, you always knew you were going to be blocked, Andy Burnham. Who are you kidding? But Matthew Goodwin. Someone I've got so much time for, a former academic. His daily blogs are absolutely superb. His analysis, his polling. He is going to be the Reform candidate. Yesterday, and let's play a very quick clip, Labour Party, the official Labour Party account, put out this post on social media of Matthew Goodwin.
I was lucky enough, or unfortunate enough, to be in Manchester a few days ago, and the energy in this room is 10 times what it was in Manchester. So, congratulations.
Well, they put, this is what Reform's latest candidate thinks about where he's standing to represent. Except, if anyone who'd actually recognised that clip, and it was pointed out within seconds, I was among the people who pointed out and knew straight away, he wasn't slagging off Manchester as a city. Oh, God, no, what a terrible city. He was talking about he just left the Conservative Party conference in Manchester, which Labour Party would have known. To make that clip, you would have known the context of that. They knew it. Everyone, community notes, everything like that, but they've left it up. Other cabinet ministers have retweeted it, and they're like, but this is the thing. I'll call it out, whichever party does this. When you insult voters like this by making something up, or making up a lie about somebody, I don't care whether I agree with the candidate or disagree with the candidate, agree with the party, disagree with the party, you're insulting voters.
Yeah, you are. Absolutely, and they should be better than that. You go and you look at the person's policies. I'm sorry, I'm a bit old-fashioned when it comes to politics.
You'll never catch on.
You look at the policies of that individual, but also I think that the Labour Party may have committed an offence against the Representation of the People Act, which states that you cannot make falsehoods against a candidate of a political party.
Oh, wonderful. We like that. No, but they
is.
bang on about disinformation and misinformation online. And they put out some of this. And when the Tories have done that, I've told them off as well. Well, they've done some dodgy things in some of their campaigning, pretending that their social media account is an official sort of account, a sort of neutral account on something. Again, it's wrong. It shouldn't be done. And you cannot bang on about disinformation, misinformation and lies if you're doing it as well. I mean, everything that comes out of the Green Party mouths is definitely a lie, but there we are. We don't know who the other candidates are going to be, but there's no doubt at all this story is going to keep on going. This is going to be a battle royal, but apparently it's now likely to be between Reform and the Greens. What a choice.
And I think the poor people of Manchester being given that choice is quite frightening, actually. They need to have a good selection of candidates, and hopefully they will.
OK, well, we shall wait and see. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, on all the other topics we're talking about. We're going to be talking more about the Prime Minister when he was a barrister choosing to be pro bono, for free, launch basically a legal witch hunt against the British veterans of the Iraq War. We're going to be talking about the pubs basically getting supposedly a bailout that, frankly, doesn't even cover the extra minimum wage and the national insurance for even one of their lowest paid employees. What would you do to save the British pub? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. More of your reaction to what Liz Truss had to say to me a bit earlier. She seems to be pretty sure that her Prime Minister should not be in China. Your thoughts on all that, very welcome. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's just approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for joining me. A bit more of a regular hour this hour. In the last hour we had Liz Truss in, the former Prime Minister. Absolutely, I mean, she was going for it in terms of Keir Starmer kowtowing in China, the risks of spying, and also call it the Prime Minister basically, you know, abhorrent actions in terms of Iraqi veterans, where he represented a case pro bono for free as a barrister before he came into Parliament, where he basically, you know, reopened a whole load of prosecutions, repeat prosecutions against British veterans who fought in the Iraq War. You know, he has form when it comes to the veterans in the troubles in Northern Ireland, does he not? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what she had to say. 0344 499 1000. Love to hear your thoughts as well on Labour's business rates U-turn. Apparently this is going to help struggling pubs, but it's been branded very quickly as too little too late. £1,650 average is what a pub is going to get in terms of help with their business rates. That doesn't even cover the national insurance, the minimum wage rise for one employee, for goodness sake. This is why pubs are going under. But how do we save the Great British Pub? I'd love to hear from you on that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at talkTV as well. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Also going to be talking about more about, you know, Keir Starmer, who has now arrived in China, not meeting with President Xi Jinping until tomorrow. Got a bit of time to get over the jet lag, but he claims that his trip to China is worth it because it's going to make British people richer. Is it, Keir Starmer? I'm not entirely sure about that. What do you think about that? Again, the number to call 0344 499 1000. So I'd like to say Claire Pearsall is still with me. She's former Conservative Government advisor. Morning once again to you.
Morning.
I mean, let's start with this trip to China. You know, announced straight after, within 24 hours, the Chinese embassy getting the approval across the river here. The Prime Minister saying it's all about a trade deal. Last time when Rachel Reeves went over, I mean, I think she got, was it £1 billion? I mean,
yes.
I mean, literally, genuinely, that is like the Chinese passing a beggar on the street, just going into their pocket, go, here you go, Britain. Here you go, Rachel. Have a bit of me loose change on the way back from the pub, because people do still go to the pub, honestly. And you know, I mean, that's not, he's going to have to raise things like the Uyghur people, Taiwan, the British activist, the Hong Kong activist Jimmy Lai, who's still in prison in solitary confinement for 5 years, and he'll do that. But basically, he's going to be on his knees saying, whatever you want, please give me a trade deal because my economy is in the doldrums. What are the odds he's going to get what will actually help Britain?
Well, he's not. He may get a trade deal which on paper will look very lovely, but the detail will be pretty rubbish to the UK economy. But what he isn't doing is addressing all of the security concerns that our own security services have. They've said that China is launching multiple high-profile sort of cyber attacks on the UK. I mean, this is the most active they've ever been.
We have the Chinese parliamentary spy accusations.
Absolutely, which fell apart.
It didn't end up going to court, but there's some serious accusations there.
And it's not news, is it, that anything to do with the Chinese, when they're looking at where they put their embassy, for example, is right up against all of the fibre optic cables that go into the city.
Just coincidence. Coincidence. By the way, it was your lot in power about 10 years ago who sold them that.
Exactly,
they said they didn't say, oh, we just fancy having a nice bit of property in London. They said, we'd like to build our new Chinese embassy there. And the Tories went, fine.
Yeah, and they shouldn't have done. They really shouldn't have done. I don't understand this real demand to be loved by the Chinese government. Because we all know that their human rights record is utterly appalling. Look at what they're doing to people in Hong Kong.
Regime.
It is.
Which
the Hong Kongers. You know, they can't go back to their own country. They're being targeted over here by Chinese secret police.
Some people who've been protesting outside the current embassy have been dragged into the embassy grounds. That alone get out of our country. And the reality is, countries that have stood up to them, like Australia, they've done one thing right. They carry on trading. China doesn't exist without us buying their stuff. The key thing is China doesn't want to import much. They've got a whole buy Chinese policy. And even when the only thing we've got to sell them, okay, there'll be some services and things, but crucially, they want to buy a load of very posh flats in Mayfair in London as investments in case they have to flee the country. Seriously, that's what's happening. And they want to come over and set up business here to steal basically our clever ideas here. That's what they do. A lot of the industrial, sort of cyber, sort of just espionage that goes on. But also, if they buy our luxury goods, with all due respect, who do you think's making our luxury goods? They're being made here. They're being made by cheap labour. Guess where? In China. I mean, and crucially, I mean, they are absolutely skinning us alive when it comes to the eco-nonsense, because you've got the likes of Ed Miliband saying, yes, please, let's buy some more of these wind turbines and these electric vehicles and these solar panels and everything else from China, where they are made sometimes by slave labour in these Uyghur slave labour camps, which apparently we're against slavery, but not with the Chinese do it because we need trade with them. And they are... And they're made in factories which are powered pretty much entirely by coal. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. It's so ridiculous. And the likes of Ed Miliband and Keir Starmer just go, close my eyes, I don't know, I just want a trade deal that's going to make us richer. It's not going to happen.
No, it isn't going to happen. And it's so appalling to see the blind ignorance of the Prime Minister when it comes to those security concerns, when they're flagged up to him, and he just almost sort of sticks his fingers in his ears and just goes, oh, I can't hear you, it's all fine, they're nice people.
Well, what do you make of what Liz Truss was saying, talking about how our civil service, the public sector are captured, and people are drunk with China Kool-Aid, and again that idea that people had about the Soviet Union as well, which is that if we trade with them, if we talk with them, eventually they will change. And I guess, and we did see perestroika and glasnost, we did see that, and the fall of the of the Berlin Wall and the freedom for Eastern Europe. But sorry, Eastern Europe is a very different matter from China. We are talking about a guy who has just purged his last remaining possible threat, the most senior general. He is in. We are looking at King Emperor here, Xi Jinping. He's absolute power, and he's a murderer. And it's got to be. He's a murderer. That's what he is. He is a terrorist murder war. He makes Putin look like your kid brother. This guy is a bad man. Our Prime Minister is going to be, what can I do? Kowtow, kowtie.
And you can imagine that anybody that's gone over there, I know that the government have been told to take burner phones and things like that, but they wouldn't know what to do with a burner phone. I should imagine there'll be their own phones taken in their pockets, which means that the Chinese are just going to hack in and listen on to the
anyway,
conversations.
they're already hacked in. I mean, Liz Truss was again suggesting that it's pretty sure that her own phone directly was taken. I mean, I think it's very, very clear if they got to the aides of the Prime Ministers, it was Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and Rishi Sunak, they probably had their phones as well. And certainly all three of those people, it's kind of just basically their phones disappeared. They no longer replied to messages. They've given new phones. Literally, you can't have this phone number anymore, or this phone, or anything. So I think we're pretty sure that is what happened. So good luck with that, Prime Minister. He does get to avoid the Prime Minister's questions today. You know the timing on these things. You couldn't leave on Wednesday afternoon. No. Got Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy stepping in. That'll be fun.
It's always fun when it comes to David Lammy. Which David Lammy are we going to get today? Are we going to get conciliatory? Are we going to get angry, shouty man? Are we going to get the Crown coming in?
I like to think that'd be fun. I wonder what Claire, Kemi Badenoch is going to be asking him about because there's quite a lot of fun and games still going on with the Labour Party over this Gorton by-election, isn't there? Which is, Andy Burnham. But there was a report from Robert Peston saying he'd been told by senior figures in the Labour Party that Andy Burnham had been told quite clearly, you're Mayor of Manchester, we're not going to let you stand as a Labour candidate to get back into Parliament. We're going to block you, and we're going to block you before this meeting of the NEC. Andy Burnham did statements in, happened to walk along the pavement and said, no, I can categorically say that's not true. I was not told that. And also the NEC is an independent body with the Prime Minister sitting on it. And therefore they couldn't possibly have known that was the case. I mean, I think I kind of knew that was the case. I think you knew that was the case. But even the Prime Minister, when asked about this on the plane and by the press delegation with him, has said, that isn't what happened. He wasn't told in advance that he was blocked from it. But But he was always going to be blocked, wasn't he?
Well, yes, he was, because it's a no-win situation for the Prime Minister, because if you stop Andy Burnham outright and admit that you've done it, then you're frightened of the so-called King of the North.
Which he is.
And if you let him stand and he gets elected and he wins, then you've just put your biggest sort of enemy right into the camp. So it was lose-lose all the way around for Keir Starmer. I think that Andy Burnham's probably playing a blinder, to be perfectly honest, because he now gets the ability to say what he likes. He's got reason...
He's now the victim.
Reason to play the victim. And
but didn't you always know that?
I think he did. He isn't stupid. The man is not stupid. He is very good at the game of politics, the down and dirty game of politics.
Yeah.
So whatever your views on his policies and everything else, at this, he's absolutely fine.
There's lots of talk of, he's on manoeuvres still. Will there be another by-election again? Angela Rayner, who wanted to return as Deputy Prime Minister under him, she's on manoeuvres. I mean, who knows what's going on? But no one seems to think that the Prime Minister is going to survive much past the May the 7th local elections, when it's looking bad in Scotland, looking bad in Wales, looking bad in the local elections, the few that are being allowed to go ahead.
Yeah, he's got some really tough times coming up. You have a by-election coming up at
very
the end
likely to lose this by-election.
Yeah, and then you've got the local elections coming up in May, which look to be pretty appalling. You've got Wales and Scotland, as well as some local authorities.
But those elections could also be bad for the Conservative Party. There is an element where, especially the Gorton by-election, if that ends up being a battle between Reform and the Greens, the only candidate we know about so far is the Reform candidate, which is former Professor Matthew Goodwin, someone who he's in contract elsewhere. Otherwise, someone I would absolutely have on the show every single week. I have to say, I think the man talks an awful lot of sense. He's gone through a witch hunt himself, has he not, over the years, for being someone who was clearly on the right, but in the academia. But we don't know who the Green candidate is. There are some names which are being highlighted, but it could well be between those two candidates. That's quite telling if a major by-election comes up, and frankly, neither the Tories nor the Labour are really in the running.
But I think the Conservative Party will always have difficulty in places like Manchester. I mean, it is unsurprising that we haven't revealed somebody. There is a selection process to go through, but also
they'll wait to find out who the Labour candidate is, won't they?
Yeah, they will do. And the Labour Party looks like they may select a local councillor, which, OK, probably quite sensible. We'll have name recognition in that area.
They want to keep it low-key.
And they want to keep it local.
And again, we played a little bit earlier this video that Labour put out, which was of a Matthew Goodwin, the Reform candidate, basically slacking off what appears to be Manchester, whereas in fact he's actually criticising having been at the Conservative Party conference, which was in Manchester, and they would have known that absolutely when they put that out. Again, massive disinformation, misinformation. Campaigns are down and dirty. You can't complain about people putting out misinformation, disinformation online if you are doing it yourselves.
And this was only on the first day.
Yeah, without their own candidate in place. Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about, more disinformation. I mean, the pubs. We're told that there's been a big bailout for the pubs. Interesting that Rachel Reeves, while there was this big bailout for the pubs, chose to be, I don't know, sitting there with her abacus or playing a game of chess and losing it, probably, rewriting her CV. What the hell she spends her time doing? It's certainly not putting a laser focus on growth, because we ain't got any of that. But she decided to send a junior minister along to the House of Commons yesterday, Dan Tomlinson, to basically announce the formal announcement of this business rates U-turn. We're told, though, this is the U-turn. Oh, great, U-turn. We're actually not going to clobber pubs. But again, it doesn't affect all hospitality. So restaurants and cafes don't get included, because we don't care about people drinking tea or having a burger, but just people in a pub. Basically, temporary help on business rates was restricted, I say just to pubs, but it got crippling tax rises that come into place in April as a result of the last budget. We've already had crippling tax rises in terms of national insurance rise for employers from the last budget, not helping them fully on the business rates. And again, this is temporary again. We're told this is going to help these pubs, but we're looking at pubs who are seeing their business rates double, having to pay an extra £20,000 a year. But the help they're getting, on average, each pub is getting £1,650 worth of help, which is not much. I don't think that would cover the minimum wage increase or the national insurance increase. So they're going to still be out of pocket, aren't they?
Yeah, it probably wouldn't even cover the cost of bar snacks for a week, would it? I mean, it's not a large amount of money for the industry, which has taken a hit time after time. People aren't going out as much.
And why not?
Yeah, because their taxes have gone up too, and they don't have that disposable income, and so many pubs are closing. And we are really in the danger territory of, do we lose pubs, restaurants and cafes? And I think the answer to that is yes, we're going to see fewer of those on the high street, and in rural communities especially.
They pop up in my area, and there's a load of money in my area. There's a lot of people with some big houses, genuinely. And think restaurants, cafes, they pop up and then they go again. The shops pop up, they go again. So many, I mean, and you know, the sort of the downgrading of a lot of, you know, the shops to just, they're just selling sort of, you know, another shop that's clearly just sort of temporary, selling cheap tat.
Yes,
as opposed to, you know, work, you know, stuff, you know, and or continuing as a cafe or a bar, because they just simply cannot make ends meet.
I hope that the cafes out there will take heed of the fact that to be classed under this, you have to have a music licence and live music. That will also get you some of the extra money. So I think cafes need to employ, you know, maybe a 17-year-old with a guitar to come and provide some live music.
I know a 19-year-old with a guitar.
Well, there you go.
There you are then.
We can
I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of the subjects we're talking about, but particularly about that. How do we save the Great British Pub? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. And again, it does involve us going out to pubs. But if people haven't got any money, it's not a good idea to be going out and spending money in the pub. Because that's the reality, but we need people to spend money in pubs. But, you know, again, if pubs could make a better profit margin, then they would be doing better. We'll talk to Tom Kerridge, the Michelin-starred chef and restaurateur owner as well, a little bit later in the show about this, why it doesn't apply to restaurants. Let's talk about Keir Starmer. Front page of the Telegraph, we put this to Liz Truss, and she said this was abhorrent and said she wasn't surprised. You know, Keir Starmer told us who he was. He was a human rights barrister before he became Director of Public Prosecutions, and then, of course, an MP and now Prime Minister. But he led a legal case that opened the door to hundreds of British soldiers being pursued for alleged war crimes. He worked free of charge, so this pro bono, you get to choose. You might have to, lots of barristers have to represent, you know, child abusers and rapists and murderers. It's not their choice, or terrorists. You know, there's a taxi rank system, but not for your pro bono work. And if you're working for free, you get to choose the cases you want to represent. And he chose, out of the goodness of his heart. Was he representing a victim of a grooming gang? No, he was not. No. Was he representing the victim of some horrible other abuse or fraud? No, he was not. Representing someone who was dealing with a rogue landlord? No, he was not. He was working free of charge alongside his big mate, Lord Hermer, now the Attorney General, and also alongside the solicitor, completely disgraced now, Phil Shiner, on a human rights claim back in 2007 that basically reshaped the law, which deals with our troops in war zones. And basically, the Telegraph's unearthed these court documents, revealed that he was the lead barrister on the case, and this basically ended up with, he urged the courts to order a fresh inquiry into a British soldier who had already been cleared twice of murder over the death of an Iraqi man back in 2003. He argued to the judges this was a perfunctory investigation, it was inadequate, and basically opened it up to there should be fresh inquiries by the MED should allow fresh inquiries into many of these deaths in Iraq. It triggered years of criminal investigation into soldiers, many who'd been wrongly accused. We know that lots of solicitors were on the make, ambulance chasing, hundreds, thousands of cases where basically, you know, you could go after these people and basically people trying to make a fast buck, and where there was clear evidence that these people had been, they lost their lives, this is family members and others, but they lost their lives, you know, in a war zone, and no one had been guilty of any crime whatsoever. I mean, Liz Truss said to you, this is abhorrent. It is, isn't it?
Yeah, well, obviously. I mean, I'm lost for words when it comes to this Prime Minister and his seeming hatred for the country and the people that serve it. And those members of the armed forces sign up to protect and serve this country. And it's little wonder that they're not doing so in great numbers now if there's the threat of being hauled up in front of a court for going out there and doing your job.
And the same with the Northern Ireland Troubles, that Troubles bill, they're going to open that up again because the European Convention on Human Rights, you know. But again, we're not talking about not prosecuting soldiers who commit war crimes.
No, not at all.
Who, you know, who take advantage of people, who rape or kill someone unnecessarily. We are talking about people acting under orders in the the heat of battle, doing the job we pay them to do incredibly bravely.
Yeah.
And in most of these cases, actually, they've been shown, there's been a big scandal about this. These are completely spurious cases. People just on the make.
Yes.
And solicitors making a lot of money out of it. And people being chased through the courts, not once, not twice, but 3 times even.
Well, there's this one individual pursued for 13 years. Can you imagine 13 years of your life being pursued for something that you didn't do, that had been proven that you hadn't done it twice in court already? And apparently, Sir Keir Starmer was working off a piece of information based on a false document.
Yeah, what a surprise.
Great. Well done. Human rights lawyer. Thought you were all over the detail.
Yeah, so it turns out he was a rubbish lawyer before he was a rubbish Prime Minister. I mean, your reaction to that, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on this, because, again, what I find fascinating, actually, is when we speak to former soldiers and when we speak to former police officers, or we've senior figures now, when you talk about people being prosecuted for genuine wrongdoing, they're all for it.
Yeah.
I mean, they want those people out. They give everyone a bad name. They are absolutely horrified by people who go rogue and do terrible things. But and we're not talking about you weren't there, you weren't in Nam. We are talking about people doing perfectly legitimate things, and yet people die in wars. And there's a big difference between someone being a wrong 'un and going rogue and killing innocent people, as opposed to, in the heat of war, soldiers being killed by other soldiers. I'm sorry, it's just it's. Again, for someone who claims he loves his country, I mean, he doesn't act like it. No. He really doesn't act like it. And that's not giving people a free pass to do anything they want. Well, I think our soldiers, I mean, they're always going to be wrong uns in every... I believe our soldiers internationally have a very good reputation.
Yes,
very good reputation.
We have the best personnel out there. They are the best trained, the most disciplined.
People take this stuff very, very seriously about acting.
They do, and these people aren't paid well either. So they're not doing it for the money. They are doing it because they believe it's their duty to serve.
Absolutely,
and we need to reward it.
Let's talk about another thing the government's failing on, and that's dealing with the migrants. We had that one in, one out little exchange. Whenever I think about that one in, one out deal between Macron and Starmer, I always remember I did the Bristol Bordeaux exchange with my correspondent française, my French pen friend, and we visited. I did 3 weeks with her in Bordeaux every year. She did 3 weeks with me. I lived in Bath at the time, and we're still friends now. We have been friends since we were 13 years old. I've literally met up with her on holiday, in recent years with her family. I mean, we've known each other all our lives. We're a little exchange scheme, and this is what this is. This is a little exchange scheme. We have one. We have one. More people have arrived in the UK, more migrants, as in return. Well, we know thousands more have arrived on the boats. Yeah. But in terms of returned from France, I'm assuming they do Air France flights. We pay for very expensive BA flights. They haven't heard of sodding Ryanair or EasyJet, have they? I mean, seriously, put them on the ferry, for God's sake. And so they've flown more people to us than we have flown back to them. I'm not sure this is going to smash the gangs. I don't think this is going to solve the problem, Claire.
Are you in any way surprised that the number coming into the UK is larger than that leaving?
No. 281 Channel migrants deported, 350 who have arrived illegally.
Yeah, but there'll be Labour ministers out there saying what a wonderful success this scheme is, and isn't this working, and aren't we smashing the gangs? So the answer to that is no, always round.
No. And another 10,000 have arrived on small boats. Again, that's just rounding it up. What do you think, by the way? Spain's got this cunning plan. This is a brilliant idea. Apparently they think, we discussed it on the show briefly yesterday, they've got this cunning ways. This is a last-minute deal between the Socialist Party and the left-wing Podemos Party. Sorry, they basically want to prop up a government. They want to keep, they say, the far right out. Their cunning plan to deal with the issue of illegal migration is they're going to legalise 500,000, count them, 500,000 undocumented illegal migrants, and give them the immediate right to work in Spain, and of course, therefore, the whole of the EU.
Yes.
Aren't you glad we voted for Brexit, folks? And those people are going to be allowed to stay as long as they can prove they've been here for 5 months.
Yeah,
They've been in Spain for 5 months. I mean, this is, by the way, a policy Boris Johnson would support, because he's always supported that.
I know. I wondered if it was April Fool's Day when I read it, because it was one of those things you sort of scroll past and go, whoa, hang on a minute. Unbelievable, 500,000 people, as long as you've been there 5 months.
But again, this is the thing. It's like, so the way you deal with illegal migration is you just make them legal.
Yeah. And then
just
your
make them
numbers
legal,
are down,
and then you
aren't they?
don't have illegal migrants anymore. You just got a whole load of undocumented people who turn up your country illegally, been working in the black market, up to goodness knows what. We know the rate of criminality among these people is far too high. One's too many. The rate of criminality we see here in the UK far too high. And now these people are going to have the right to stay and work in Spain. Because I'm sure they're all engineers and doctors, so they'll be paying a fortune in tax and making their contribution. And then they can go anywhere they want in the whole of the EU. Good luck with that, everybody. So glad we're out of that madness. Or are we? Because I tell you what, that's what the Labour Party would do as well. 11:26 is the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the things we're talking about today. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. We'll get to your calls up next. This is Talk.
And a lot of them are very disappointing. And they're just sort of quite robotic and boring people. And they're not like real people. And I know people say that, and I don't want to just say the thing that everyone says, which is they're not like real people, they're like robots. But I promise you, they really, really are. But Suella is one of the few who, I've said this before, she might be insulted by this because we're probably closer in age, so it's not possible, but she could be my auntie. That's how I feel about Suella. She's a proper person. She's fun and interesting. She's a real human being. So I'm happy for her and I'm happy for reform.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:29, let's squeeze in a couple of calls before we go to my next guest. We're going to talk about the Starmer Chinese visit. We're also going to talk about the pubs with Tom Kerridge and what help do pubs and restaurants need from the government, because clearly what they got yesterday wasn't enough. But let's go to David, who's on the line on 0344 499 1000. He's in Exeter. And David, you want to talk about Keir Starmer and this revelation about, just basically non-stop prosecutions for veterans.
Yeah, morning. I was assisting the late Dennis Hutchins, and I say great as well, Dennis Hutchins, with his lawfare case.
Yeah.
And this work that Robert Mendrick and at the Telegraph and Johnny Mercer have done is absolutely first rate, because what we've got now is a situation, I think, where Keir Starmer is clearly at the centre of all of this. And the costs of it. And this is where where he's so incoherent with it, because he wants to put the country on a war footing and Ukraine and deploy troops and get more reserves. So let's look at the strategic position, because Dennis's campaign was principally a strategic campaign, not a personal one, although it did personally cost him so much, even to the extent at the end of his court case, Julia, he withdrew his own dialysis so he would die in court.
Oh my
Dennis
goodness.
was literally a martyr to this cause. So I've got to say, and this is in line with a conversation I've had over the last couple of days with many senior officers, some of them SAS generals. What is the cost of this? Not just personally to those veterans like Rich Cattrall, who's frankly a hero, but look at the strategic costs. This is going to cost billions if it's not stopped in lawfare. And then we've got the detrimental impact on the serving military.
Absolutely. And again, there's been warnings about this. I think Kemi Badenoch's among those. Certainly Nigel Farage has been talking about this, but that this is just untenable in terms of current and future serving soldiers, because expecting I'm just going to spend the rest split-second decisions. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in court.
Starmer has really put himself in the middle of this now, because if you think, Julia, he's gone full circle. So pro bono with Herm are working on this case to keep pressing it. It's unleashed this lawfare clearly. But he's then gone to DPP, and he's then gone to now be Prime Minister. Now, when I was fighting this with Dennis, and we'd got some really good support from the likes of Frederick Forsyth and one or two others who were running this in the press, along with Robert Mendrick, and we always felt that there was a corner somewhere, a dark corner where we set a block, because it was under a Conservative administration at the time when we were pressing this. And we couldn't get through it. It didn't, we were really, really hitting a wall with it.
And is this like the last jigsaw piece then?
Yeah. I think we're there now. I think the lid's off this. Starmer's position in the context of war, greater and more threats in Europe now with this, and what he's done to the military, his position, frankly, is untenable.
I mean, very firm words there. David, thank you very much indeed for that. Someone who clearly knows an awful lot about this issue, dealing with veterans. Thank you very much indeed for that, David. Let's go to Dan, who's in Portsmouth. And Dan, I mean, again, similar, I suppose, in similar topics. You want to talk about this sort of plan to sort of, well, there's a campaign to, after raise the colours, putting our national flag up everywhere around the country. People now basically finding the flags and taking them down. Apparently there's now going to be a campaign to put them back up again. What do you make of all of that?
I think it's hilarious. I put all the flags up in my village.
Good for you.
Put them up in the summer. First time I put them up, I wasn't quite sure of the legality, so I put them up under the cover of darkness.
Yeah.
Still got caught out by a couple of villagers, all of whom were very supportive. Quite a posh sort of sleepy village. Second time I went out and tidied them up because they were looking at, and they all go up the correct way, which is something I think is quite important.
Oh yes, yeah. Yes, I mean, guys, people just Google it, guys. You can get them up the right way.
Yeah,
but a lot of people say they can get a bit tatty through the winter. We've had a lot of wind and rain and the like. They need to be replaced.
I've replaced all mine, tidied them up. The church took theirs down, so I wrote them an email and said, what's going on? They said, but they're not inclusive.
They literally said that, the local church?
Yeah, they literally said they're not inclusive. I said, well, I disagree. So I put them back up, and I added to them 140 foot of bunting from the lamppost, from that lamppost to lamppost. So the church
include that
better than everywhere else.
Here's the thing: when they say they're not inclusive, what they mean is they think it's about white people, and that somehow they don't include British people. They don't think that black people or anyone not is British, which is them being racist, ironically.
They're very racist. That's what I said. I said that anyone who comes to this country should love that flag and feel the same way about it as I do. So in which case it isn't. And then the third and final time, someone took them down just before Christmas, and I couldn't get them replaced quickly enough, but they all went back up. They went back up bigger, better. They go to the very top. They go up with steel tie wraps, and they look fantastic. And everyone is very... The amount of people that... Some old dear came up to me as I was putting one up. I thought, here we go, I'm going to get into trouble here. She looked quite posh. And she said, are you the flag man? I said, well, yes, I am. I am, madam. She said, well, thank you very much. It's lovely, isn't it? And that's basically
there you are. There you are. And that's it. You know, just the quiet bits of Britain, the silent majority. They support you, Dan. I'm loving your work, mate. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. 03444991000. Your thoughts on any of the topics we're talking about, do get in touch. Up next, going to be talking about what on earth we think Keir Starmer may try and get out of his visit to China. I'm also going to be talking to Tom Kerridge, the Michelin-starred chef and pub owner, about that so-called help for pubs we heard from the Chancellor and her acolytes yesterday. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Home of Common Sense, thank you very much for your company. Great call just now from Dan, who just basically keeps putting up those England flags and those Union flags. I love the fact that the Church of England, for goodness sake, doesn't like the England flag as it's all inclusive. Oh, by the way, we've got a new Archbishop. It's a woman. First woman. We're all very excited, apparently. I imagine she's as captured as the rest of them.
Should we put out some bunting?
I mean, yes, just put out some bunting for her. See if she likes that. I mean,
yeah.
Can I just say that sounded? I mean, you know, again, yet another senior figure of the Church of England, like most of the churches, where actually when you look at their record on issues like tackling abuse, haven't really got a very good record to stand on. What a surprise.
No, they don't.
But there we are. Let's move on. Let's talk about more about the Prime Minister. He's arrived in China. He's not meeting Xi Jinping, the authoritarian dictator, king, emperor and murderer and slave keeper, Xi Jinping. But apparently it's all going to be laughs and loves, and they're going to have a great time together when they meet tomorrow. But Keir Starmer is there to try and get a trade deal of some sort, or some trade benefit. He's got a 60-strong delegation, lots of the leaders of some of Britain's biggest companies hoping to do a deal. Let's face it, any deal that's been done with them has already been signed and sealed. They're just going to announce it and make it look like this is a wonderfully successful trip. But can it be a successful trip given the different power dynamic between the two countries? Well, let's ask Dr. Alan Mendoza. He's Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. He's also Reform UK's Chief Advisor on Global Affairs. Alan, thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, Julia.
Thanks for coming on the show today. And we've talked to you many times about lots of different world affairs. But I mean, you know, China's the big one, isn't it? Because, you know, this is the second biggest economy and military in the world. It wants to be the biggest in both. It wants to control not just every single person in China, but every single person in the world. We've got Xi Jinping. He has just ousted his final possible challenger and the senior figure in the military, a childhood friend by all accounts. He is, you know, you could argue, because he doesn't have to bother with the silly thing called democracy, the most powerful man in the world. What are the chances that Keir Starmer, who couldn't negotiate the price of a Mars bar, is going to get a good deal out of him?
Well, it depends what you call a good deal. I mean, it's possible to get money out of China, of course, in terms of investment. But the problem is, what are the industries the Chinese, you know, might want to invest in? And if they are industries that are relevant to our critical national security infrastructure, and we are giving, once again, away the crown jewels of our national defence to a hostile power, then that isn't a good deal, no matter what money he gets from the Chinese in response to this. So, look, we can trade with China, Julia, that's fine, and we should trade with China, of course, because we are a trading nation. But we shouldn't trade with China in areas that might compromise homeland security.
Yeah.
That, to me, is where the line is going to be drawn as to whether there is a good deal here or a bad deal.
You know, and were those plans, weren't there, under the Tories, you know, to let Huawei be involved in the 5G network? That got scuppered, thankfully. You know, China involved in our nuclear power stations being constructed. Luckily, we don't really get around to building those, so that kind of idea got thrown out of the way. But we just, you know, handed over a big piece of prime London land to the Chinese embassy. They want to build a super mega embassy right over these majorly important, vital communication cables into the city. Big question marks about that, but big question marks, of course, about anything that China's going to do for us when their main aim is to sell us more of the stuff that they make and with very little intention of buying anything of ours.
Well, again, that's the other part about trade deals. You want some reciprocity in this as well. You want to see that your industries, your businesses are going to get a fair shake in the Chinese market. And that the Chinese have had a terrible record in. Of course, they are protectionist. All this talk about free trade only works one way. It's free trade into us, but never into China in quite the same approach. So, you know, what's the Prime Minister going to say about that? What's he going to do about that? What's he going to do about some of the, you know, some of the other problems we have with China, such as their spying on us, espionage, the sanctioning of MPs, the Jimmy Lai case in Hong Kong, the Uyghurs? Are any of those going to get a mention? We don't know.
Well, I think it's realistic they will get a mention, but there's a question of whether the Prime Minister goes through the motions, as every foreign visitor has to do about these human rights things. You go through the motions, the Chinese know you're going through the motions, and then when you're asked by the reporters, did you bring up the case of the British Hong Kong national Jimmy Lai being held in solitary confinement for 5 years simply for and facing the rest of his life behind bars at a very old age, simply for campaigning for freedom in Hong Kong? Yes, I did. There you go, done, job done. But the reality is they can bring these things up in a way where they don't really offend the Chinese and it doesn't really take up much time.
Well, interestingly, the Chinese do get offended by it. That's the funny part of this, that what we regard as formulaic and sort of embarrassing to even say, they get hugely offended by. And I agree with you, it is good that they should be offended. And what really should be happening, of course, is that the Prime Minister doesn't just mention it, but say to the Chinese, what are you going to do about it? Because
to
that's
which
part
they
of our...
should reply, what are you going to do about it, Prime Minister? Because the answer is absolutely nothing.
Well, if that's the case, then we have a clear understanding of what our relationship with China is. And what the government should be, of course, doing is not claiming it's doing some middle way, which turns out to be, as you've just pointed out, formulaic on one side and then just give us all your cash and we don't care about where you're investing. Say to the Chinese, well, if that's your attitude, we intend to stake out these key areas of our economy where you can't invest in. Sorry, that's just the reality of it. And you can sell us as many T-shirts as you want. We're delighted to buy your T-shirts, as long as they're not produced by Ouija Labour. Let's go on that basis.
Yeah, I mean, again, the reality is, I mean, our entire economic policy is completely ruined by the net zero policy, which is entirely predicated on getting solar panels, wind turbines, electric vehicles, all that made in China, all of which are made either by slave labour and or using coal-fired powered factories. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. It's so disjointed and not thought through. But they don't seem to care about that.
No, and the irony of what you just said, of course, is that they keep on polluting at record levels. So, why are we following this madness where only we are bound by it? We make no difference globally to any sort of real emissions totals. And, as you say, we are essentially just enriching China to keep on polluting and to get key stakes into the energy industry in the UK. It's madness. And, again, that is not a middle way. That is a surrender option. And once again, this government, like the last government, is prioritising more the desperate need for money over sanity in this regard.
Yeah, the question mark is over whether or not we're actually going to get a deal that will actually be beneficial to Britain, because let's face it, China's going to make sure it benefits them and our Prime Minister can't negotiate anything. It's interesting they've taken their burner phones. Liz Truss was on the show a bit earlier. She said, she was International Trade Secretary. She was, former Prime Minister. You always took a burner phone to countries like China and India as well. India, supposedly an ally. Would we just expect that, phones would be hacked and tapped and that was just the norm? I mean, frankly, do we do it as well?
We might do it in a slightly different way, but look, it's the job of countries to sort of gain information from their adversaries, as it were. We obviously expect it. What we don't expect, going to their country and being monitored is, I think, a given in terms of how this works. What we don't expect is for them to come here and monitor us here, and that's the big difference. So that is crossing the line in terms of what is normal behaviour for countries to be doing in this area, and suggests that we have a much bigger problem with China than we would have with other countries.
No one expects the Chinese Inquisition. Do we expect the Prime Minister, as a human rights barrister, to have basically spent his entire life working for free, trying to undermine British defences? Because that's basically the accusation that stands against him. This revelation in the Telegraph today that he, alongside his big mate, now Attorney General Lord Hermer, when they were both working as human rights barristers, worked for free, basically on a case, basically against the MOD, basically saying, look, we don't believe that some of the cases against British veterans who served in the Iraq War, when people have been get off, including one guy, literally 2 court cases found innocent in both, we don't believe there's been enough of investigation. We think these cases should be reopened, which led to an avalanche of cases being reopened, and frankly, a lot of ambulance chasing lawyers and persecution of veterans who had done nothing wrong. What do you make of this?
Well, look, there is this cab rank rule when it comes to the bar, which we have to be careful of, because once you start going, barristers can't take certain cases.
But this was pro bono. The cab rank rule doesn't apply when it's pro bono.
Yes and no. There are reasons why you might do it. But the bigger question right now is, forget about what they did as human rights lawyers. The bigger question is, now they're in government and can do something about this by passing a law to say we will not have any of these cases going. Why aren't they doing that? Why are they punishing our veterans? Why are they punishing the people who put their blood on the line for this country and did the right thing for this country? Why they now threaten them, decades potentially after things with this point? They could easily come out and say, here's a law, no more prosecutions, it's done, end of story. Why aren't they doing that? That's a real question to ask.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly when it gets to the troubles in Northern Ireland, that was supposed to be the deal as part of the Good Friday Agreement, because the paramilitaries aren't facing future prosecutions.
Exactly. So they could even be going on their favourite story, which is we are following international treaties. Well, they're not, because they're refusing to allow, that treaty to be respected in this regard. So it is shocking and shameful, and that does suggest that there might be something more to their previous ideas in this regard than simply following some code of the bar.
Talking of shocking and shameful, did you manage to notice the BBC reports, and they've done an apology for this, not a surprise, on Holocaust Memorial Day yesterday, where the script that given to newsreaders, news presenters throughout the day talked about this was, of course, this is remembering the 6 million people murdered by the Nazi regime over 80 years ago. Again and again, they kept referring to the 6 million people. Of course, more than 6 million people died in the Holocaust in those camps. Other people were also killed, but the 6 million number refers to Jews specifically targeted in the Holocaust. They've been forced to actually issue an apology for that. It was factually incorrect. It was quite a bizarre thing to do, to omit the word Jews from a report on Holocaust Memorial Day. But this stuff doesn't happen by accident. Is this also shocking and shameful by the BBC?
Well, of course it is, because this is not the first time it's happened on news channels either. I think ITN had a problem last year in the same way with this. What it unfortunately shows you, Julia, is that key institutions, wish to strip out the real context of events and turn it into something much more fluffy and universalist. The reality is the Holocaust was a unique crime perpetuated against the Jewish people in an industrialized mass murder focus, whether that was by bullets or by gas chambers, but it was happening through a racial theory. That's never happened before. It hasn't happened since in that way. And, it's unique as an event. And the uniqueness of it is why Holocaust Memorial Day was originally set up. It wasn't about all Holocausts or all genocides. It was about this particular Holocaust, because there's only one capital H Holocaust and everyone knows it. And to deny that tells you there's a problem again within our institutions that want to somehow cover that up.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we're there again, and it's always the BBC. Dr. Alan Mendoza from the Henry Jackson Society, also Chief Advisor for the Raw UK Party on Global Affairs. Thank you for joining us. 11:48 is the time. Up next, Tom Kerridge, Michelin-starred chef and indeed pub owner, about why that so-called bailout for pubs isn't going to actually hack it. That's up next. This is Talk.
It is astonishing that this government thinks that they can go kowtow on bended knee begging China for trade, when what will they get? They'll get steel dumped on them, overproduced in China, bad domestic market, batteries, electric cars, arrays, solar arrays, wind farms. They're going to dump all of their overproduced stuff on us, much of it made by slave labor, by the way, and we will turn a blind eye. In fact, Miliband, up until when we managed to stop him recently,
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:51 is the time. Let's talk about the pub bailout that wasn't a bailout. It's going to be worth, we're told, 300 million quid, but it works out as £1,650 on average per pub. Is that really enough to save the Great British Pub? Well, let's talk to Tom Kerridge about that. Not only is he a Michelin-starred chef and TV presenter, he's also, of course, famously a pub owner. Very good morning to you, Tom.
Morning, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. Lovely to talk to you. I mean, look, people might say, oh, come on, you know, you must be doing very well. You've got your Michelin stars, you've got all your successful business, you're always on the telly, you're not struggling. But how hard is it to run a pub these days?
I think that's, I mean, they are fair points. I've been asked to appear on media and talk about things that I have a secondary form of income, and that does come from television and books, and that puts me in a very fortunate position. However, my businesses are struggling exactly the same as everybody else's within that hospitality sector. We sit there, you know, I am, for every one of me or Michelle Roux or Gordon Ramsay or anybody else that appears on television has businesses in hospitality, there are hundreds of thousands of other businesses that are not in that fortunate position with secondary incomes.
Yeah,
our local pubs, our coffee shops, our restaurants, our hotels, everything that's in hospitality is incredibly under pressure. The margins are so small. Most, if not, I would say 95% of operators are just about breaking even, if not making losses. So at the minute, the sector is under huge economic pressure. It is a culmination of things over the last 5-10 years, post-COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, of issues that have dropped into it. But there are massive things that come through food inflation, through utility bill rises, through national insurance increases, through minimum wage increases, and then the business rates that have then dropped in. So there is a huge amount of all those margins that have been eradicated. If you think food inflation, for example, on average is up about 17%, but on prime cuts or things that use beef, for example, that appears on pretty much everybody's menu, that's up over 40%. Ouch. So these are, you know, all of these sort of things, and all of these are added costs that you can't necessarily, or you just can't. We've got to a point where it's saturation that you can't put those costs onto the guests and consumer.
The obvious thing is, oh, well, put up the price of your steak or whatever by 40%. People won't pay that in most pubs. They simply they haven't got the money, or they'll choose to have it home. And this was a problem, wasn't it? COVID and lockdown exacerbated things. I still remember a picture popped up on my, you know, when your phone every now and then pictures pop up of me and my husband and my brother having a drink in the pub the first day we were legally allowed to sit outside a pub, and it was so exciting for everybody. But people got out of the habit of going to the pub. Oh, I can get the drink for a fraction of the price at the local supermarket. But of course, we miss out on all that, you know, the banter, the camaraderie, the meeting people, the, you know, and keeping local businesses afloat. This help that we were told was coming was, you know, it's another government U-turn, of course, but we were told this would help pubs. But bizarrely, not restaurants, not hotels, not cafes. I don't know why we apparently don't care about them, but the amount of help that was offered. Interestingly, the Chancellor of Rachel Reeves sending out an underling, so she clearly wasn't sure she was going to get that much, you know, credit for it. We're told it's too little and it's too late. What is an extra average of £1,650 a year? What difference is that going to make to the average pub? Because does that even cover the minimum wage increase or the national insurance increase?
Now, I think what's happened is I think that's the average across the pubs. And I think actually, listen, the way that the rateable value is put together and trying to be understood by our industry and everybody else's is incredibly difficult. I do think that pubs that don't quite make the £100,000 rateable value, their actual rates will go down, but there's quite a few in the majority that it still goes up. It's still not very, very helpful. So in some cases, it actually will help some of the very smaller independent pubs that don't have very large revenues. And the difference between the way that the businesses, the calculation, pubs are done on turnover, whereas the rest of hospitality, restaurants, hotels are done on turnover and square footage, which is one thing for the rateable value and trying to understand that, which is an incredibly complicated system and just doesn't work. It isn't fit for purpose. And we can clearly see over the last...
this age,
No, and you can clearly see over the last few months that it just doesn't make sense for anybody, let alone hospitality. I think the bigger issue is that pubs now operate with many food offerings. Many of them operate just like restaurants. Many of them operate with the same sort of... with the same costs, and the same for hotels. And the difference between ordering a drink in a hotel bar or ordering a drink in a pub, the costs are exactly the same. The minimum wage is the same. Everything else that comes into it is exactly the same. So a blanket help for hospitality would have been much better than just singling out pubs. I think there's only, out of 7 people, one in hospitality, 1 in 7 work in pubs. That's the other 6 working every other side of hospitality.
But again, also, and it's a really key way, you know, and Claire's in the studio with me as well. You know, they've got teenagers. It's one of the. It's how I started out, working in doing pub lunches, working behind the bar, working as a waitress. It's actually, you know, it's a key entry to the world of work for lots of young people. Again, a lot of pubs, they can't afford to hire people. Why would you hire someone who's, you know, a teenager when you're having to pay the minimum wage that costs a fortune, when they're at that point probably not worth the minimum wage? What help would you like? Because we talked to a guest yesterday, we actually talked last week or the other week before, Andy Lennox, the guy who started that campaign basically banning Labour MPs from pubs, which is, I think, has had quite a big effect on Labour MPs. But you know, you don't want charity. You're not looking for a handout here. These are proud business owners who wanted to provide a service and to their local community, and we want to support that. What could the government do that would actually help?
The biggest thing is bringing VAT in line with the rest of Europe. I mean, we operate on the highest VAT costs across Europe, you know, where everywhere else sits between 8 and 12, maybe 15%. Yeah. You know,
you're at 20%.
What that does is we're at 20%, and what that does, because most other businesses, they have VAT on whatever they do, but you can get it back. Yeah. Whereas hospitality, there is nothing that you can get back. So what you need to be able to do is those percentage margins will allow hospitality operators to operate, to be able to pay bills.
So this is all within the power of the government. Like these international inflationary differences on food or on energy, they have the power to just, they don't have to give anything, they just have to not take the same amount in tax. That's what they need to do. Yeah. And then we would keep those businesses going, paying tax. We would keep those jobs going, paying tax. And we'd keep these vital parts of our local communities going.
Yeah, I think it's a harder sell. I understand when you say to somebody, listen, we need to be able to pay less tax up front, but long term, it is help. It is about growth. It is about the future. Short term, this government it's short of cash. We hear it all the time. Yeah. And no matter who you speak to, I've been very fortunate to be able to speak to a number of secretaries of state, and whether it's from education, whether it's from health, or whether it's from business and finance, they all need help. They all need, and it comes from the Treasury, and it comes to them being able to give them more money. Yeah. The Treasury hasn't got more money, so it is.
But this is a short-term gain for the Treasury that long-term is going to cost jobs. And also, again, hospitality, huge part of our tourism industry, a huge industry in the country, and people come, they want to have the pubs and the restaurants. That's what they're looking for. We'll have to leave it there. You're a great advocate for the industry, Tom Kerridge, Michelin-starred chef, TV presenter, and of course pub owner as well. Really appreciate you joining us there. Claire Pearsall, listening to all of that. I mean, this thing, no one's asking for a handout, but they can't function on the tax. They're being taxed out of existence, and it's specifically the tax.
It is, and what the government is also doing is pitting the industry against each other by saying, well, pubs, you're now more important than restaurants, cafes, you know, florists, hairdressers. But they're all operating the way.
The pubs all serve food. They're just treated as local restaurants, effectively. Yeah,
and they are. It's the same cost.
It's short-termism. This is government this is policy being made by ministers and civil servants who've never worked in the private sector, have never looked at a balance sheet, haven't got a clue how to do this, and don't understand why people are hired and why people aren't hired. Because the public sector will just hire some more people and put everyone's taxes up. You can't force people to be a customer in your pub if you put your prices up. They literally don't get it. Up next, you'll be hearing the music. We're going to get the latest headlines. Then we're going to get Prime Minister's questions, except it's Deputy Prime Minister questions. Guess who that is? David Lammy. You know you can't wait for that. That's up next. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you. 2 minutes past 12. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. If you see the smile on my face, it's because we're just about to have Deputy Prime Minister's questions. PM, of course, has chuckling away from Peter Cardwell there. Claire Pearsall also still with me in the studio. You think, oh, who's standing in for the Prime Minister? Oh, it's David Lammy. Oh, we're definitely going to watch a bit of that any moment now. We're not going to have Kemi Bader, of course, because the Prime Minister's away. Then, of course, the Leader of the Opposition put someone in her place, and that will be the Shadow Business Secretary, Andrew Griffith. No, me neither. But anyway, we are going to wait and see what those questions are, and we'll take that live, those exchanges, see what happens, because let's face it, wasn't the most successful Deputy Prime Minister's questions last time David Lammy was in the hot seat. Also coming in this hour, we're going to talk more about Keir Starmer, that legal witch hunt against Iraqi veterans back in 2007. Also, Spain thinking that the way to solve the illegal migrant crisis is to give 500,000 undocumented migrants legal status. Yeah, brilliant idea. For God's sake, don't give that idea to Keir Starmer. He'd probably lap it up straight away. Anyway, as I said, joining me today, Claire Pearsall, still in the studio, former Conservative Government Advisor. Also, Talk presenter Peter Cardwell. Oh, and we're going to go live to the House of Commons right now.
Speaker. Can I start by echoing the Deputy Prime Minister's comments about Holocaust Memorial Day? Yeah. We must never forget. May I also associate this side of the House with the condolences expressed by the Deputy Prime Minister to the family of Captain Philip Gilbert Muldowney. I also offer the condolences of the House to the family of Lord Flight, one of my predecessors in Arundel and South Downs. He served in Parliament with distinction for more than 2 decades. Mr. Speaker, after the Chancellor's U-turn yesterday, can the Deputy Prime Minister confirm that over 90% of retail, hospitality and leisure businesses will get nothing?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I welcome the Shadow Business Secretary to the dispatch box and join him? I remember Lord Flight well when I arrived in this House. It's always a pleasure to hear from the co-author of the mini-budget. And the man who said that Liz Truss has the best plan to deliver for voters. Remember that? Of course, all of us want to see our pubs in good health and to support hospitality. That's why the Chancellor announced a £4 billion package of support. But yesterday, in addition, business rates for pubs and music venues will be cut by 15% this year and frozen for the next 2 years, and will review the methodology for valuing pubs in the future. I must say that contrasts with the party opposite, who of course saw 7...
Apologies there. We seem to have just lost a bit of... Oh, I think we've just got it back. We just lost a bit of the audio there. Let's get back to the
Mr. Speaker, he wants to talk about experience. I spent 25 years building businesses, creating jobs. He spent 25 years manufacturing grievance. And if the party opposite knew anything about business, they would know this is too little too late. Our high streets, their high streets, are bleeding out. The Chancellor's handing out. They don't want to hear this, Deputy Speaker. Our high streets are bleeding out, and the Chancellor's handing out a box of sticking plasters. They can't even U-turn properly. Mr. Deputy Speaker, a senior advisor, Mr. Speaker, a senior advisor to Andy Burnham said yesterday the Chancellor just wants a cheap headline. Meanwhile, our high streets are being decimated. He's right, isn't he?
Deputy Prime Minister.
I've got to say, Mr. Speaker, he talks about business. We know what his plan for business is. This is the man who opposed the minimum wage and said it was, quote, simply something that legislators pass to make themselves feel good. Well, let me tell him, raising the minimum wage doesn't make us feel good. It changes lives. And Labour's proud of how we're supporting small business. And on small business, creating hospitality zones to cut red tape, greater licensing freedoms, very important, and tackling late payments. All of that supporting business. That's a hard price of what small business saw before.
Mr. Speaker, you don't make young people better off by putting them out of work. Mr. Speaker, his MPs are already banned from pubs. Where next? Shops, restaurants, hair salons. That may not make a difference to him or I, but for many of them, they should back our plan to scrap business rates, but they haven't got the backbone to cut welfare to pay for it. And it's not just business rates, Mr. Speaker. Under them, the cost of hiring is up. So could he tell the House how much more does it cost to hire a 21-year-old under Labour?
Deputy Prime Minister.
He talks about young people. The party opposite left a shameful legacy. 1 in 8 young people not earning or learning when they left office. We're investing a record amount in apprenticeships, which they had on its knees. We're creating talented excellence technical colleges for our young people, and Alan Bilbert is doing a review on young people who are currently out of work. By contrast, they would freeze the minimum wage, oppose giving young people an increase. They've got nothing to say for the next generation.
Mr. Speaker, you can feel the Deputy Prime Minister's frustration. The Prime Minister's away, the Business Secretary is away, and here he is, left behind Lammy, the designated survivor, having to defend the indefensible. And it's very clear, he doesn't know the answer, Mr. Speaker. So let me tell him, the cost will be up £3,600 a year. Under Labour, businesses can't afford to hire. 1 in 6 young people can't find a job. This government is blocking people who just want to get on in life. People, Mr. Speaker, ambitious people like Andy from Manchester, having his dreams crushed by Labour. So could the Deputy Prime Minister explain why unemployment has gone up almost every month they've been in office?
Check his fact. 500,000 people in work more than a year ago under us. The Shadow Business Secretary is in no position to lecture anyone about U-turns, by the way. This man was Boris Johnson's net zero business champion. Now he opposes the renewable investment, creating jobs and opportunities right.
Andrew Griffiths.
Mr. Speaker, the thing he didn't want to say is that every Labour government leaves office with unemployment higher than when they arrived. And there's a reason for that. They don't understand what it takes to be an employer. They don't understand business. They're strangling business with their red tape, and they're about to make things infinitely worse. So will he tell us his government's own estimate of the cost to business of the Unemployment Act?
Deputy Prime Minister.
I'm going to take no lectures from you on business. My father was run out of business under the Thatcher government. I know what it's like. to grow up under a Tory government. And whilst we're talking about it, 26 Tory MPs and counting have already defected to Reform, and now...
OK, I'm hoping we get that feedback. I do apologise. I don't think we're missing much, to be fair, in terms of these exchanges. They're rather sort of hard work, aren't they, these exchanges between the Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith and the Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy. We've just got one more question to go from the Conservatives. I don't know if we can get the feedback just for that final question, but it does appear to have gone. I do apologise for that. A bit of a problem with our tech here. They usually get the big flourish at the end. I'm not sure we're going to necessarily get that from Andrew Griffith. I mean, there are a couple of... there's some very, very solid points being made there in terms of a crucial issue we've just been talking about with the pub owner and Michelin-starred chef Tom Kerridge about the help for pubs, which frankly is too little too late. It's what everyone is saying. Quite a nice gag about what other businesses are Labour MPs going to be banned from after pubs. Is it is it restaurants? Is it shops? Is it hair salons? Not making a big deal to Andrew Griffith, who's bald, and David Lammy, who's pretty bald as well. Also a nice little gag about Andy from Manchester having his dreams crushed. Little dig there about Andy Burnham being blocked from standing in the Gorton by-election. But other than that, I would say, Peter Cardwell joining me in the studio, pretty sort of flat PMQs, wasn't it? We were hoping for a little bit more of fun. I've got to be honest with you. I think if you can't put the punches into David Lammy, you're not doing a very good job.
Yeah, I think the strategy that Kemi Badenoch has of rotating people doesn't really work, because even though it's an adversarial relationship, it hasn't been built. And if you had someone who's really good parliamentary performer like Alex Burkhardt, for example, not particularly well known, of course, but still someone who can land a punch on someone like David Lammy, that might have been a better idea. Andrew Griffith certainly knows his stuff on business. Yeah. He was a senior executive at Sky, for example, for many years. He knows business. He is a successful businessman, but nonetheless, it didn't quite land. It felt more like business questions to me than Prime Minister's questions. Yeah,
we were all sitting there, as I'm sure you were, especially when the feed went out, just sort of looking a bit at each other. What is that question? As usual, though, of course, Claire Pearce, the person answering the questions on behalf of the Prime Minister doesn't actually answer the questions. He certainly didn't know the answer to what was the cost. I thought it was a good specific question. What is the extra cost of hiring a 21-year-old as a result of the changes made by the Conservative Party? So the Labour Party, it's the Conservatives, and the cost is up £3,600 a year. That is a very stark figure, and that tells you why they're not hiring people.
Exactly, and that's the one question that should have really been landed with a massive punch, and it's the great question to ask. I just think the way it was asked didn't get the kind of response that we were looking for. It all felt a little bit flat.
Do we? I do worry sometimes when we discuss this, because I think we're all a little bit nerdy, the three of us, aren't we, when we discuss this? We do
won't have it said.
You definitely are. We like the political theatre, we like these exchanges. But I mean, it does matter for people in terms of their political careers. Doing well in Parliament will show, this person's a performer. They can do it. They can take the argument to the opposition. They can get a laugh. They can hold the audience's attention. That does matter. Although, of course, it doesn't necessarily translate into votes. I mean, William Hague being the prime example.
Yeah. And that's the problem, is that we expect our politicians to be absolutely everything. We want them to be entertaining. We want them to be down to earth. We want them to have experience in all kind of businesses. It just doesn't happen. What you do need is that connection. You need to be able to stand up and make people believe in what you say. And there are only a very few people in that place that can do it, and the majority of the new MPs stand there in the House of Commons reading from their mobile phone.
When I used to be in the lobby when I was a political journalist, and I said you weren't allowed to do it, you'd be told off for reading. Absolutely. People would be shouting, reading. Yes. I'm not entirely sure why necessarily a memory test is the most vital thing. I have notes in front of me when I'm interviewing a cabinet minister or a former prime minister.
But you don't sit there and look down at them and read off them. And if you're in the House of Commons, this is your moment. Yeah. You should know the subject that you're speaking on. You've applied to speak in a debate, therefore you have an interest.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just not very good performance. Again, but communicating with this is about communicating with the public. This is the clip, if the Prime Minister's not away, which goes on the 6 o'clock news, and that's often the only news a lot of people see. So it does matter. I mean, there wasn't. I thought that £3,600 a year line was good. The Andy from Manchester line good. But other than there's not really a punch laid on. I mean, of all people, David, I mean, frankly, that French cab driver was at more risk from David Lammy or his wife than he was from Andrew Griffith.
Yeah, I think this was a very low-key PMQs. There weren't many blows really traded either from David Lammy either. I mean, he talked about Andrew Griffith not supporting the minimum wage. I mean, that was a very long time ago. Talked about
Tories generally didn't. They were opposed.
Yeah, exactly. His record as a net zero champion, and talking about Liz Truss's budget being a good thing. So there were a few blows there, but really it didn't get moving.
No one knows. With all due respect, I like the man. No one knows who Andrew Griffith is, and no one cares. No, but let's have a reality. Most people need to, reality check politicians. Most people couldn't name more than 2 members of the cabinet, let alone a shadow cabinet minister.
And that's why it's kind of a risky strategy for Kemi Badenoch to say, when it's Deputy Prime Minister's questions, for her not to do it, that's the convention, but is there someone who's a really good performer who did very, very well at this, for example?
And
she never used Robert Jenrick, not once, in this, for example, which for reasons you can understand.
Exactly. No, Kemi Badenoch was speaking this morning, while we were interviewing Liz Truss on the show, and it's interesting, she's coming out fighting. She's certainly more energetic than she used to be. She finally came on the show here last week. I mean, she has been out and about. I think she's realised she needs to kind of upgrade in the last couple of months her energy levels and her being out there levels, because you're up against someone like Nigel Farage who can just, press conference after
he's
press
everywhere.
conference.
He's everywhere.
He is everywhere all day. The man has energy levels. I mean, he's early 60s now. His energy levels are greater than the average, frankly, 6-year-old kid running around.
Certainly, yeah.
And she's facing that. But where are you in terms of where we are in terms of the Gorton by-election? Because we've got one official candidate so far, that is Matthew Goodwin for the Reform UK Party. Really interesting choice there of a seat. I think we're going to have an interesting battle when it looks like the Muslim Vote organisation called Muslim Vote, set up in 2023, say they're going to back the Green candidate, whoever that is, because they've got 28% of Muslim population in that constituency in Manchester, and basically saying they're going to call on Muslims in that constituency to vote for the Green candidate. Certainly, when you talk about what Matthew Goodwin has said as an academic and as a pollster, and his writings, and he's got a brilliant Substack, and he's on does a lot of media. Basically, he's saying we have an Islamist threat here, specific, different from Muslims, but we are going to be talking about a bit of a clash on some key issues in that.
Very big clash. I think this is going to be a fascinating by-election. Whoever the Green candidate is, that's going to be an interesting one. I don't think it's going to be Zach Polanski. It may well be their deputy leader, actually, who's a Muslim and has some very questionable views. Yeah, very questionable views.
There's a female candidate that's possibly being considered as well.
Yeah, who's a local, I think, as well. Yeah. Also, does George Galloway stand? That's another very interesting point as well.
He's been ruled out. The Workers' Party, they put a candidate in last night. It was late last night.
Wait a minute, you don't keep up on what George Galloway's doing every second of the day.
I'm afraid the Workers' Party feed is not one I follow. But the all right, Rula. But they see, I knew about Rula Leska. I didn't know about the Workers' Party candidate. The true, and you called me a nerd.
I was going to say none of the people exactly. But all these shenanigans going on about Andy Burnham. I'll stick with you on this, Peter. Is and again the little dig there. I like that. Like this poor young Andy Burnham from Manchester having his dreams crushed. This whole sort of battle of words of a sort of clearly Robert Pestley's got very good contacts in government, and particularly actually in the Treasury, as we know from being his job for so many years at the Bee during financial crisis, basically saying, look, there's been this battle between Burnham and the Prime Minister and the NEC, and basically Andy Burnham was told in no uncertain terms by Number 10, you are not going to be allowed to stand in this by-election. Yeah. You're going to be blocked by the NEC. Can't risk having you, losing the mayoralty of Manchester. He says that's not true. I was not told this. The Prime Minister actually talking to the gaggle of journalists on the plane to China has said that it's also backed up Andy Burnham. But these briefings, this battle between Andy Burnham and Number 10, does any of that matter?
No, I don't think so. It's a mess, clearly, politically. What it does show is the Prime Minister is not in control of the people who are briefing on his behalf, or alternatively is, and then denies it, which is worse.
I mean, both of those are very likely.
Yes, exactly. Maybe they're both true at the same time. So the interesting point, I think, on this is that Andy Burnham is neutralised for a little while, but he'll come back, or indeed Angela Rayner saying, I'm not dead yet. As she said last week, she may have £1 million of fundraising behind her as well if she wants to stand.
Could you get that out of the flat in... Probably got a new mortgage against the flat in Brighton.
When/if she gets through this inquiry. So she's banking that she will. I think the more likely one is probably Wes trading against Angela Rayner. Angela Rayner probably wins. If there's a contest, if it happens, you know, there's a lot happening. Andy Burnham will return to Parliament, I would imagine, at some stage. But this nonsense.
But how?
Well, maybe at the next election. But this nonsense.
But he has to be selected for a seat.
Yeah, well, it's true. But he could, in theory, I mean,
there is an argument. The argument is that you said you were going to serve 4 years, and it's the only argument that should have been given by the Prime Minister of the NEC, and it's a perfectly legitimate argument. You said categorically you would serve a 4-year term. You weren't just going to go, carpet bag to get yourself a.
Well, I love this nonsense as well as I want to support Keir Starmer. I mean, it's just such total nonsense. Also, they would lose probably the mayoralty of Greater Manchester. So there's a lot of risk for Labour in all of this. I see where Keir Starmer's coming from, but the problem is he's acted in a weak way because he is weak.
Yeah, absolutely. Claire Pearsall?
Yeah, I mean, I just echo what you've just said there. He is incredibly weak. He's handled this so badly and has actually just given more power to Andy Burnham.
Made him the martyr.
Yeah, absolutely made him the martyr. But the one person that comes out of this better than anyone else is Wes Streeting. Because he answered questions on the whole thing by saying this is a matter, this is a party matter, it's not for a cabinet minister. I'm here to talk about the health service. He's dealt with this
also,
so
when
well.
He's been accused of being up to things, and he just, when he's gone on telly and he's just absolutely killed it. He's done really, with humour. But he's considered too much on the right, too soft, Blair, for the party membership to vote for him.
But also he has to consider all of the rest of the people on the NEC, some of which are his mates, and the rest of the MPs who he will rely upon, who will then help with looking at the party membership. I mean, I don't think it's out of the water for him yet.
No.
The interesting thing I find about Wes Streeting is, despite running the health service, despite all the big things that he's got to deal with, he somehow found time to write every Labour MP a Christmas card.
Oh,
funny
that's
that, isn't
nice
it?
of him.
Just kind.
Doesn't take that much time, to be fair.
404 Christmas cards.
Gordon Brown always found time. Do you know what he used to do when he was chancellor? He used to write personal letters to every single Labour MP who backbench you, and it took a long time, obviously, with that massive big majority, 179 back in Blair's day, the first election. He would write every single one when they used to do their maiden speeches, and often they'd be like at 11 o'clock at night when they'd finally be getting up and down. And Gordon Brown would write them a note the next day. Obviously, someone would tell them what had happened, and basically would say, I don't think it was televised at the time. The excellent point you made there, really good speech. Every single person got that personal.
Yeah, he also wrote to the people who got voted out of the X Factor. Do you remember that? He wrote them a personal letter. He would ring them.
Really? Do you know what he also did? I was political editor. I had my daughter, and I've got a personal letter from the Chancellor, and from I also got a blanket for her.
That's lovely.
Yeah, we used it for the guinea pigs. She did use it for my daughter as well. Beautiful blanket. Still got it. Absolutely beautiful. Brilliant. I'm just, I don't think the political editors were all very different times. They were all men then, so it was quite unusual for one of us to have a baby. Of course, under Labour policy now, men can have babies, so that's fine. But there we are. Let me ask you just on more important things. Prime Minister's in China, getting a terrible deal, if anything at all, from the Chinese. Meanwhile, with that front page of the Telegraph, really damning. A lot of people getting on the phone lines about him being involved. Pro bono. So I'm sorry, you do get to choose the work you do for free. Totally. Along with Lord Hermer. That name keeps coming up. He's there. Anything going wrong, he's involved. His big mate, fellow human rights lawyer, now Attorney General, the guy who handed over the Chagos signs, you name it, he's involved in it. But he's basically was, involved in this massive court case for encouraging the MOD, Ministry of Defence, to reopen a whole load of cases where veterans, one guy, he'd been found innocent twice, case reopened. And we've seen what's happening with the bill involving the Troubles in Northern Ireland as well. And I know you talked lots about that. Obviously, from Northern Ireland, you understand that so much better than I would. But, this is really damaging stuff. Talking about possibly sending troops to Ukraine.
Phil Shiner was involved. Phil Shiner,
absolutely
disgraced solicitor, absolute ambulance chaser. This is highly embarrassing. This is something he chose to do, and this is a pursuing of these people who had been cleared on a couple of occasions.
It is a witch hunt. We're not talking about people who have been subsequently found to committed war crimes. We're talking about people who find innocent again and again.
And as you say, Hermer's name keeps coming up. It is my strongly held personal belief he is the most dangerous man in government.
Yeah, absolutely. he's going to have to go at some point. He really is. I don't see the backbenchers putting up with him much longer. But there we are. Great to have you in the studio, Peter Godwin. Tell me what show you're doing today.
Not today, but I'm back on. I'm identifying as Julia Hartley-Brewer on Friday from 10 until 1.
Oh, fantastic!
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, I'll choose your outfit for you.
Excellent.
That'll be fun. Peter, come on back then. Thank you, I really appreciate that. Claire Fizzle staying with me. Up next, going to take a quick break. Then we're going to actually be talking to a former British Army Colonel and an Iraq veteran, Simon Diggins, about all of that. We'll get some more of your calls as well and talk about why Spain thinks it's a really good idea to give 500,000 people who've arrived illegally in the country the right to stay and to be legalised. That's a great idea, isn't it? Should we do it here? Please don't answer that question. This is Talk.
It is astonishing that this government thinks that they can go kowtow on bended knee begging China for trade, when what will they get? They'll get steel dumped on them, overproduced in China, bad domestic market, batteries, electric cars, arrays, solar arrays, wind farms. They're going to dump all of their overproduced stuff on us, much of it made by slave labor, by the way, and we will turn a blind eye. In fact, Miliband, up until when we managed to stop him recently,
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. We're going to squeeze in some of your calls in the next half hour. Also going to be talking to the Iraqi veteran, British veteran, Colonel Simon Diggins, about Keir Starmer's work to basically, take on veterans accused again and again and again of war crimes, even though they keep being found innocent. First up, I just want to let you know, in terms of war, the president who says he wants to end wars, Donald Trump has just issued a statement on Truth Social. It's one of those ones that end with "Thank you for your attention to this matter." We have to take those ones seriously. A massive armada, he says, is heading to Iran. It is moving quickly with great power, enthusiasm and purpose. It's a larger fleet headed by the great aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln than that sent to Venezuela. Like with Venezuela, he says, it is ready, willing and able to rapidly fulfill its mission with speed and violence if necessary. Hopefully, Donald Trump writes, Iran will quickly come to the table and negotiate a fair and equitable deal. No nuclear weapons, one that is good for all parties. Time is running out. It is truly of the essence. As I told Iran once before, make a deal. They didn't. And there was Operation Midnight Hammer, a major destruction of Iran. The next attack will be far worse. Don't make that happen again. quite an extraordinary message. We know about that fleet heading to Iran. Again, the president had offered help people of Iran protesting on the streets, saying, "Go out onto the streets. We will stop the Iranian leadership from killing people." We know we're looking at a minimum. I mean, a bare minimum of 30,000, mainly young people, being shot dead by the authorities. People being executed, many imprisoned, many more injured. That death toll likely in realism far, far higher. Let's talk to Simon Diggins now. He's a former British Army colonel and Iraq veteran. Simon, before we talk about what we encourage you to talk about, just your reaction to what Donald Trump has had to say there, because this does follow, of course, that attack with Israel's help, working together on the nuclear facilities that Iran has to make them less of a threat to the Middle East and Israel, and indeed the West. But what do you make of this armada, he says, travelling to Iran?
Julia, good afternoon to you. And yes, this is a very serious and very important message from President Donald Trump. You'll recall when at the height of the protest that we were aware of, I think it may still be ongoing, he made a very clear, if you like, warning to the Iranian regime that he would not put up with it, but nothing really happened. Yeah. I think at the time the difficulty was they didn't have the forces in place either to defend US interests in the region, particularly the friends who have bases in the region, so those in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, and indeed in Bahrain, all of which are vulnerable to Iranian missiles, and then also the forces to strike back. The one thing that Iran's still got is some 3,000 plus ballistic missiles. Now, they're not all very long-range missiles, but many of them could hit sensitive targets in the Gulf region. So I think what this force is going to give him is the ability to defend and then also to conduct the offensive operations, which he didn't have last time when he made those statements.
But then he shouldn't have said, go out on the streets because we're going to stop it, because he basically said, clear message to the mullahs, if they start shooting people, if they start killing people, we will be there to help. And people went on the streets thinking he was there to help. We had a few, early days, a few hundred. We know it's in the tens and tens of thousands, and people are still being rounded up. People are being rounded up from hospitals and executed. We've got very, very strong, evidence for that now, and they're not getting any help.
No, and I think it was a naive and unfortunate sort of encouragement at the wrong time. We also had the same from Prince Reza Pahlavi, also said get out there on the streets as well. So they're all saying things at the same time. They didn't have the forces in place to actually do what they needed to do, and I think that was wrong. They are now going to be in place, and it'll be very interesting to see actually what he does now to deal with the Iranian regime. The sooner they go, the better, frankly.
Absolutely. I think we can all agree with that, apart from, of course, the pro-Palestinian lot apparently not that concerned about people in Iran being massacred on their streets. But there we are. Let's talk about what's happening back here at home, or what did happen back in 2007 when Sir Keir Starmer, along with his now Attorney General, big mate, fellow human rights lawyer Lord Hermer, basically worked pro bono along with the now seriously disgraced solicitor Phil Shiner on a human rights claim that reshaped the law governing troops in war zones. Tell us a little bit, I know you'll understand this far better than I will, tell us a little bit about what this court case involved and what it has unleashed in terms of the hounding of British veterans who served in Iraq and elsewhere.
Well, what it's unleashed, and I need to be very clear, and I heard Peter speaking earlier, and indeed one of my colleagues, Elliot Wilson's written very well about this in Spectator this morning. But what it did not unleash is a form of law which is very hard to deal with. It's called a law in principle. The ECHR is written in terms of a series of principles rather than the common law. Every soldier who deploys and fights for this country fights under the rule of law, whether it be rules of engagement, whether it be investigation. So this idea that we were a kind of lawless warrior band roaming the street is so completely wrong. Very much under investigation the whole time. But ECHR gives you a different perspective into where things are going, because it's written in a series of principles. It's very hard to actually argue with the principles because they all sound very good. The right to life, the right to family life, the right to this, and we'll go, oh, there's a good idea. But then it turns into a sort of form of lawfare, which actually is very hard to do, which is precisely why people like Hamer, the Attorney General, and Starmer were keen to bring.
But wait, are you saying though that basically, if you shot somebody in war as a veteran, as a serving soldier, you've taken away their right to life and their right to family life in principle, and therefore you should be prosecuted? No, not at all. Quite the opposite. No, my point was that if we did use force, necessary force, it was reasonable, minimal, and necessary, and that was laid down in law. What they've done by bringing the ECHR into the whole thing is raise a whole different series of questions, which
developing law has seemed to suggest that we now end up being questioned about everything we do, and you can be questioned retroactively. Sergeant Cottrell, who's a case which is particularly highlighted this morning in today's Telegraph, was investigated 4 times. 4 times. Every single time he was found not guilty and innocent. But
and it was years and years each time, this hanging over him, a criminal prosecution, going behind bars. It's just, but this has been going on for a long time. And again, mentioning that this disgraced solicitor Phil Shiner, basically ambulance chasing, and frankly, a lot of just very, very spurious cases being jumped up, basically making money for the solicitors, and some blatant outright lies being spouted by some of the claimants just to basically get a nice payoff. I mean, that's what it was all about, wasn't it?
Well, it seems to be, and the thing that's really highlighting that particular aspect is what's about to happen again in Northern Ireland. The government's plans to remove the 2023 Legacy Act, which the Tories brought in, and bring in this new Northern Ireland Troubles Bill, will unleash all of that. The estimate is there are some hundreds of potential claims out at that time. But the interesting thing about that is the one set of claims that will never ever progress are the ones that really need to progress, which is against the IRA murderers who killed the majority of those people who died in Northern Ireland. 3,400 people were killed in Northern Ireland troubles. I'm ignoring those injured for the time being, however horrible their injuries were. But about 3,000 of those were killed by terrorists, majority by Republican terrorists. There is no way on God's earth they're ever going to be prosecuted because they haven't left no records. And so what's happening is they're coming after the one group which did have records, which recorded what they did, we investigated thoroughly, i.e. the military and the police forces, and they're coming after those. And that's what this ECHR does. It basically does not really protect anybody. And there's no element of equity about this. It just gives an opportunity for people to exploit, in this case, absolute deliberate lawfare, which, by the way, we're paying for.
Yeah, exactly, on all sides. But this is the thing. The Good Friday Agreement, when that was signed, there was lots of controversy about this because, a lot of people had to, give up a lot of claims on justice in terms of, people who were IRA terrorists who were on the run and never, ever served time for the crimes, against not just soldiers, against deliberate attacks on civilians. They were allowed to return and not face prosecution. People were released from prison. The idea was, we're going to year zero it. We're not going to fight all these battles. One of the biggest problems in Ireland has been for many years fighting the battles of the last century. Like, let's move on, draw a line, and we all move on. But basically, the line has only been drawn for the paramilitaries, not for the British Army. But of course, we do expect higher standards from the British Army. But as you say, they're being held to an impossibly high standard by the armchair generals and by lawyers. And again, and the same with what was happened with these Iraqi veterans as well. And Phil Shiner, if you're working with a solicitor, he brought the original case, and he was later struck off and convicted of fraud. He made false claims. He paid intermediaries to procure false evidence in Iraq. These cases are all predicated on frankly very spurious grounds.
Absolutely, and what's so frustrating is the ECHR applies to most countries in Europe. And countries like the French, we don't often take many lessons from the French, but the French, whenever they go on operations, put in a derogation for the ECHR for their service personnel because they recognise the ECHR was never written to deal with combat conditions and the kind of instant decisions, life or death, horrible decisions that have to be made that soldiers, airmen and sailors have to make. So they very sensibly derogate from that, formally derogate, and say whatever happens in operations will be governed by French law and French military law.
And we don't do that. But this is the thing, we are not talking about a free-for-all for soldiers to commit war crimes. Am I not right in thinking, I've got someone from a military family, Claire Pearson, in the studio with me, that actually Britain has a very strong record and a very good reputation internationally for, sticking by the letter of the law and not, and punishing our own when people do the wrong thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll give you a quotation. This is from the Falklands War, going back. At the end of the Falklands War, we were returning Argentinian prisoners back to the Argentine, and the International Red Cross were brought in. And an International Red Cross official said to the Argentine prisoners, "You were lucky that you were captured by the British. They will obey the rule of law," and they did. And that's us.
And we should be proud of that because we are better than than those who don't. But that's the thing. But I mean, in terms of where this happens, what does this tell us more about Keir Starmer? I mean, given that, as you said, linking this to the changes in the law they're making regarding those who fought in the Troubles in Northern Ireland. I mean, again, we're just having another free-for-all. And we're in the same territory, again, like with, the police officers who are armed police officers who are I think, doing a magnificently brave job. And we know they're not trigger happy. You just have to look at the number of people who get shot. Some years, no one is shot dead by the armed police in this country. That tells you how untrigger happy they are. We are not talking like American cops, and they're facing prosecution, even for murder, again and again and again, for situations which are so blatantly, obviously, to acts of self-defence and acts to protect not just themselves, their colleagues, but also us as general members of the public. These are all people who, frankly, I want to shake the hand of to say thank you for keeping us safe, and they're facing prosecution. This idea, that we are just turning everything on its head in terms of expecting people to take these risks with us, to put on a uniform, to hold a weapon, to keep us safe, whether it's on British soil or off British soil, but protect our interests. And then they're going to face prosecution for doing the job we paid them to do. It's immoral.
Yeah, it's immoral, but I think you're absolutely right to draw those connections. And I think you can draw the connection. You can draw the connections from the launch of these cases in 2006 to 2007. We've seen with the Chagos where one opinion, advisory only for the International Court of Justice, is deemed more important than national sovereignty and indeed all sorts of other international agreements. We see their attempt to overturn the Troubles Bill in Northern Ireland. At every stage, what you're having is an elevation of international law, written the way it is, often written for very good reasons, but also having its own background. That is elevated over the security of our country and the rights and duties of a government. And that is really dangerous. And very curiously, everyone talks about manifestos. This is something which is kind of beneath the radar, but it's been surfaced. People like yourself are doing a brilliant job of doing that, but it's been surfaced time and time again. And it's looking to make fundamental change in who we are and how we operate. But they're not changes that have any kind of democratic mandate, and frankly, they need to be got rid of. We need to get rid of the ECHR. I never used to say that. I always thought you could make an adaptation. If we can't adapt
with you all the way.
rid of it.
Simon Dickens, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Former British Army Colonel and Iraq veteran. As I say, Claire Pestle's still with me. You're from a military family. Again, this is something people are feeling very, very strongly because this is about, their comrades in arms.
Absolutely. And when you join up, that's what you do. You join a family, you serve your country and you look after the interests of that country and you look after your fellow colleagues in whichever armed forces branch that you're in. That is what you do. You are there for no other reason. You're not there for the glory.
Yeah, you're there for the money.
Not there for the money. You're there for the security of the country and of the monarch.
Yeah, it is absolutely soul destroying that they think, and they again, Keir Starmer, they think they're the nice people. They think they're the nice people because it's human right. That's what they think, and that's the terrifying thing.
I want to take them to a cadet group and say, look at young cadets, look at what they can do, and how inadequate are you sitting there in your Islington dinner party when those kids out there are going on to be our next fighters.
I'm in awe of people in uniforms who go out and do that stuff on our behalf and protect us. And everyone should be. We should be certainly treating our veterans, and our serving soldiers the way they get in America. Okay, they're not actually getting that much help after they leave in America. They're trying to change that, but in terms of you're a serving soldier, you don't pay for your drink. Someone else is going to pay for your drink. Yeah. We should have a bit more of that attitude in this country. We really should. 12:44 is the time. We're going to take some of your calls up next. We're also going to be talking about Spain giving 500,000 illegal migrants legal status. What could possibly go wrong? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:46 is the time. Let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000. And Chris is in Epsom. Chris, you want to talk about a conversation we've just been having actually about Keir Starmer and working as a human rights barrister, basically unleashing yet more and more legal attacks on our troops.
Hi Julia, hi Claire. Yeah, I'm ex-UKSF. I went to Reform for Veterans on Monday.
Yeah.
We invited David Bull, and it was a fabulous event. Sarah Puchin, Suella Braverman, David Bull, and obviously Nigel, which he always does, spoke without notes and completely from the heart. It was, to be honest with you, I'd never warmed to Sarah Puchin until I saw her speak live at that.
That's interesting. But do you feel, I mean, they said that was like that event before it became the Suella Braverman defection event was about backing veterans. You feel that party is going to be on your side?
She spoke from the heart, absolutely. She has my 100% undying support, as do all the other Reform members, Lee Anderson, Layla Cunningham, I think is marvellous.
Okay.
But one of the things I wanted to say was, as ex-UK Special Forces, I'm one of the people that Starmer has got in his crosshairs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also not 65 yet. So I'm also one of the ones he wants to call up to go and fight for.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I can honestly say that I think I'm possibly not the only one that would feel like this, that it wouldn't be a member of the Russian group that would be in my crosshairs.
You're quite angry, Chris. I feel your pain. Before we go any further, I'm probably going to have to cut you off just in case. But no, I appreciate your call, Chris and Epsom. I appreciate the sentiment as well. Thank you for that. Stuart is in Somerset. Stuart, you want to talk about this help that isn't really much help for pubs, don't you?
Yeah, good afternoon, Julia. I've calmed down a bit now because there's been a bit of a gap between when you spoke to our friend Mr. Tom Gerridge and me speaking to you now. I am sitting here, metaphorically speaking, spitting bloody feathers. Tom Kerridge signed an open letter outlining his outright support for the Labour Party in 2024. He's come on your show today and openly criticised what the Labour Party have done in terms of basically taxing small and medium-sized businesses out of existence. I'm sorry, Tom, no dice.
Okay, well, hold on a minute, though. In his defence, you could argue, well, yeah, he's endorsed the party. He thought they were going to do something different. They've done something which people didn't predict in various budgets, and now he's calling them out and saying they're doing the wrong thing. I mean, I'm all in favour of people judging political parties by what they do and what they say, rather than just what colour rosette they've got.
I totally agree. But Tom Kerridge is a very bright, very articulate and very well-informed man. What did he honestly think he was going to get when he openly supported the Labour Party and voted for them?
He should have expected this.
That is their raison d'etre. Tax and spend, tax and spend, tax and spend.
Okay, fair enough. Tom Kerridge, if you're still listening, you've been told. Stuart in Somerset, thank you very much, Dee. Going to take a very quick break. Oh, goodness me, I think we've... I thought we were going to speak to our next guest. I think we're going to take another quick break, are we not? We are going to take a quick break and we'll get our next guest up. We're going to be talking about, Spain giving 500,000 people who've arrived in the country illegally the right to be there legally. Well, as I said a few moments ago, what could possibly go wrong? This is Talk.
astonishing that this government thinks that they can go kowtow on bended knee begging China for trade, when what will they get? They'll get steel dumped on them, overproduced in China, bad domestic market, batteries, electric cars, arrays, solar arrays, wind farms. They're going to dump all of their overproduced stuff on us, much of it made by slave labor, by the way, and we will turn a blind eye. In fact, Miliband, up until when we managed to stop him recently,
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:52 is the time. Time for one last story. Hey, it's quite a biggie story, but wow, this is going to make you pleased that we left the EU. Spain has decided in their infinite wisdom, their government, that they're going to give 500,000 illegal, undocumented migrants legal status. They reckon it'll help defeat the far-right threat to the socialist government. But legalising 500,000 people who've arrived in the country illegally, how well is that going to work out? Let's talk to Tom Jones, who's Deputy Online Editor of The Critic and joins us. Hello, Tom. Thanks for joining us.
It's all right. Thanks for having me.
I mean, this is an extraordinary policy, except it's not that extraordinary. It's something that's been discussed by lots of political parties, including in this country, where, of course, one Boris Johnson has suggested you should basically give an amnesty, which is what this is, to a huge number of illegal migrants in the country, because, well, you know, you may as well get them working legally. They're here anyway. Nothing else you could do about it. So do you think we might be looking at following this policy?
Just before that, I want to touch on the fact that if only there was some clue that Boris Johnson was going to do what he did in terms of immigration when it came into number 10.
Well, he'd written columns about doing this. That's the thing. It was a bit of a giveaway.
Yeah, absolutely. So this policy basically is Podemos, which is the third largest party in Spain. They are looking at basically allowing undocumented immigrants, asylum seekers, anybody who's been living in Spain for more than 5 months, to just let them apply for legal status. Applications, they say they're going to process those in 15 days. So wow. I think it's safe to assume that they won't be doing particularly rigorous background checks. They've said it will help dismantle institutional racism that only fuels exploitation and racist hatred. But I think what this really is about is that the party is currently polling at about 18%, which puts it third, 8 points behind the Socialists, 13 points behind the Conservatives. So it's just about vote buying. And that's exactly...
But who do they think they're buying the votes from? The left wing, presumably people go, oh, well, we've got all these illegal migrants. The solution surely is just make them legal. And then they disappear in a puff of smoke.
Well, I think they're planning to buy votes from the illegal migrants, basically.
Who will have a right to vote. I mean, again, whether these people then suddenly become wonderful, contributing members of society would be another matter altogether. But this is going to pave the way for, of course, these people effectively being legal Spanish citizens. At that point, of course, they can travel anywhere they want around the EU, can they not?
Yes, absolutely. And this is a huge... continues to be a huge problem for Europe, and it's a huge problem economically. So we're looking, Starmer is looking, I'm not doing it. Starmer is looking at a youth mobility scheme. Yeah. And basically that's because Europe is pushing for that because the rate of youth unemployment in Spain is huge. It's about 25% in Spain, and they created 450,000 jobs last year. about 400,000 of which were filled by migrants.
Yeah.
So basically, we're going to be used as a dumping ground for people who are underemployed in Spain because Spain prefers to hire migrants.
Absolutely. So again that's a lot of employers do here. Which, well, we've got a massive unemployment issue with our young people, but again, this is clearly going to benefit European Union countries more than us, because again, our language skills, because English is the second language for pretty much all these countries, they're going to be able to benefit from it. We've also known migrants, we've got them buying fake jobs to stay in the UK legally. There's a big industry now, according to the Times today, basically, you know, you pay 20 grand, you buy what is effective. Oh, this is a job I've got, I'm being hired by this company. You get your visa, you get into the UK, job doesn't exist, you disappear, but you're in the country legally. I mean, this has been going on for years in different ways, hasn't it? But basically the government doesn't make any checks.
No, not really. I think this is quite interesting. So clearly this has been prompted by probably some of the investigations around the Trump administration. They've been looking at H-1 visa scams very closely, which are particularly a problem amongst the Indian community, bringing people over for jobs that don't exist. It's been a problem in Britain for a long, long time. We've known about rampant abuse in the social care sector with people brought over for companies that don't exist. There is also a problem on the supply side in terms of fake degrees. I can remember the case of one Nigerian immigrant, I think, who came over, earned £1 million as a consultant for the NHS as a physiotherapist.
Brilliant.
And nobody had bothered to check that the university attended was actually real, which of course it wasn't.
Wow, extraordinary. Tom Jones, Deputy Online Editor of The Critic. I wish we had longer. I mean, it's Claire Pearson, I mean, your face and my face during all of that. Again, none of it should be a surprise, but it is still always shocking, isn't it? And meanwhile, of course, that one in, one out scheme Keir Starmer came up with last year with Macron. They returned more people here than we've sent there. I mean, I don't even... None of this is going well.
It's not, and the Home Office is kind of whack-a-mole. You solve one problem, another one pops up, and they don't have the ability to be all over what they need to be over.
I don't want to be negative, but I don't think those gangs are being smashed.
Do you not?
I just don't think that's happening.
Oh,
I don't know, maybe you feel different. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Ian Collins is here. Afternoon,
so cynical.
So cynical. But
the gangs aren't being smashed. Brilliant what he's done over there. He's smashing them.
I want you to keep this up the full 3 hours. Go on.
He can't stop himself. Out he goes with his little kind of metaphoric mallet, smashing up those gangs. Keir's out there. Oh, there's a gang. Let's smash it. And off he goes, smashing away like a little smasher.
Keep going.
Smashing all day long. Smashing it is. Yeah. No, it hasn't worked. It was a rubbish thing to start with. It was almost up there with Stop the Boats, wasn't it?
But, I was going to say, are you going to be talking about for your full 3 hours on air about the fact there's now the first female... sorry, I'm bored myself there. First female Archbishop of Canterbury. Because looking at all the TV screens in the studio, they're obsessed.
Can I correct you? It's a bishopette.
A bishopette?
Sorry. Yes.